unspeakable crime, murder at midnight. A deal I made, a life I had to take. Someone I loved once held so tight. The screens will follow me, cries of my ancestors set going. My operate, fasting ingrained, shape-shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. From the ancestors crying. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. This form I desire, innocent blood I will devour. Ancestors gathering round the dwelling, the spirit inhabiting, evil enveloping, the dancing graves in the night, the spirit occupying and transforming, stolen hides, dark practices, my secret life, feathered outers, mysticism, intriguing, my operate, fasting ingrained, shape-shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. From the ancestors crying. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same. Give me the ability to hide in plain sight, so no one can see me, not even in the light. I am the crawler, I'm a within, I'm nobody's friend. This initiation is all part of the dark creation. My desires performing incantations. I walk in disguise. If I catch you, it's your demise. Shamanism, my religion, summoning spirits, manifesting myself and changing my flesh. A nightmare to behold. I'ma make you part of the fold. The skin of a man, the soul of a predator. The change is complete. This thing I become, my flesh has succumbed. My operate, fasting ingrained, shape-shifting. I feel the animal hide inside me. From the ancestors crying. I feel the change. I feel the change coming. We are one but not the same.
Change inside of me. The inner human slowly dead in me. I feel it come alive. The darkness brings me light. There ain't no stopping it, and you will never hide from me. Pain of the change. What have I become? A creature of the night, ruled by moonlight. The pain of the change. This body's no longer mine. Feel wild and free, but caged at the same time. was this creature always inside of me? The pain of the change. What have I become? A creature of the night, ruled by moonlight. The pain of the change. This body's no longer mine. Feel wild and free, but caged at the same time. Sad to be human, think human, feel human. A hunger's arising inside of me. The beast is alive and breaking free. Sad to be human, think human, feel human. Keep putting more chains on the beast, hope it don't break loose. You better hope so too. Whoa, you better hope so too. Whoa, you better hope so too.
Folks, welcome to PRT. I don't know if you know what that means. When we originally came up with PRT, and I have to take all the credit for it, honestly, it was just me. I can't even say that because it wasn't all me. You know what? I'm missing my notes here. Hang on one second. Just hang on. And I found them. He needs help. That was fast. I didn't realize how fast you could be doing it. We sent Maddie on an errand. Maddie was up here organizing things, trying to find any way possible if there were more 2X's, and there's not. So I had somebody message me about the Patreon thing and how it works, okay? And so I guess people are under the impression, and maybe I said this, I don't know, but I was corrected by my, I don't know if Anthony, Nelly, and Tony and Maddie are my staff, but people in my life that try to tell me what to do, okay? So they said that the $10 tier originally never included a shirt. So I don't know if we've been doing this wrong or not, but I just thought it would be cool, you know, to give somebody a shirt if they were a $10 Patreon member. So the original, so we looked it up because we had all written it down, whatever. And even though it was Tony who had written it down, I'm going to be honest, Tony's handwriting is way better than mine. I could actually read his, right, Anthony? Ours,
I think he's got the best handwriting out of all of us.
yeah, it wasn't like mine.
Mine's terrible too.
Yours is just tiny. So
yeah.
So here, let's clear it up here. So let's make sure we know this. So tomorrow, or not tomorrow. I'm sorry. Saturday we're off, but Sunday we're doing a show, and then Monday, just to be clear, Monday, we're doing a Patreon show, and then from the Patreon show, we're going to go over and do the live call in or whatever. But on the Patreon show, we need to figure out what we want to put in the tiers, in the 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 tiers. So on Monday, if you're a Patreon or you want to become a Patreon, instead of just saying, hey, this is what you get, whatever, blah, 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 we're going to come up with an idea of how we're going to do the Patreon. And you Patreon people will be the ones to decide that. You're going to make that decision. We already got to come up with the new colors of the shirts that we were going to have made, which is black and gold, right? And then we came up with a few different things, right? And you guys had a big influence on how the new store was going to look. Everybody wanted more hats. So that was something that people wanted. Dragon Paw says, I'll be back. I'm shooting an episode for my podcast. Dragon Paw, let me know what that is. You need to tell us what your show is. What is that? Because you tried to jump in the other night and I missed you. I hate that when we don't get to everybody, but we went in this other direction and it kind of just went off everywhere. But I wore this shirt today because somebody had said in the chat something about they thought Venger was a cool character from Dungeons and Dragons, and I've had this shirt for a long time. It's a Dungeons and Dragons Venger shirt, and I was just looking for a reason to wear it. So I decided to wear my Avenger shirt. And I guess this hat would probably be more appropriate to wear with it because it's kind of orangey. See, what do you think? It kind of goes with it, right?
I think it matches.
Matches.
I like it.
But I had the black Raiders hat because I've always liked the Raiders since I was a kid. It goes back to when they were badasses, even before they were badass back in the 60s and 70s. But when they beat the Redskins in the Super Bowl in like '83. That's when I was really I liked them.
Those are the Al Davis days.
Yeah, Marcus Allen and Jim Plunkett was a quarterback, and it's just
Lyle Alzado.
Or maybe Schrader was the quarterback that year. I think maybe Jay Schrader was. I think he was because maybe it was Plunkett. I don't know. It was one of them two. I remember, but they were I liked that team, and I used to watch them every chance I got, and my dad did too, and. I just thought they were badass because they had, Howie Long and all those players. And that was, back when they were real tough, and I read a book called Jack Tatum. They call me Assassin. And that was such a great book. And I thought, it's awesome. These dudes are vicious. They had Villapiano and Queen and all them guys. They were tough guys, man. And so anyway, I just really I always liked the Raiders,
Mm-hmm.
Lyle Alzado. There were so many of them on that team. It's just, it's hard to even fathom, Ted Hendrickson. I'm sorry, is it Hendricks? Ted Hendricks, not Hendrickson. But anyway, those guys, Bob Golick, they had some tough guys on both sides of the ball. They were just tough. Art Shell, crazy good offensive lineman. And until, Eric Williams came, he was largely considered one of the nastiest, meanest players in the league, An offensive lineman can be really vicious.
Mm-hmm. You have to be.
I played defense for most of my football, and some of them offensive linemen, dude, I played against a few of them to get a hold of. Ben Fricky, he used to play for the Cowboys. He played for Anderson High. And when he was in the contact flag league, he died a few years ago of cancer. A really good friend of mine. I know I got pictures with him. He's a really good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he gets a hold of you. It's like you can't, it's just. And I played against Russell Gaskamp, who's All-American UT. Played against some really great ball players over the years, and but I could always get through. I was really good. Problem, couldn't act right. Couldn't keep my hands to myself, always throwing hands at people, getting into fights. And you can make excuses why it happened or whatever. It's just like I said the other night, it doesn't matter. You can't make excuses. You just got to live with it. You got to deal with you got to live with the consequences of your choices. Right? I feel good, though. I feel good. I got back in the gym last night. I didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, it was
I didn't
great.
miss a beat. My elbow was still hurting. It was really hurting with that gout, but it was, sometimes you got to work. You got to get in there and work it out. And I think I did, and I got rid of some of that, and I wasn't happy with a couple of the stations that I was on where I wasn't able to lift as many reps or as much as I would have liked, but I'm being almost 2 weeks being out. And now tonight I'll be doing legs because my knee was bothering me for a few days, and I was kind of worried about it getting gout, but I think we'll be okay. Thank you for that, Maddie. Says donations are not expected but greatly appreciated. Here's the link to the PRT PayPal. Yeah, I am in pain quite a bit, but I found this supplement that it's all natural. And I know a lot of times people like all natural, and it's not. It's called Curamed. It's expensive. That's the problem. I use it sparingly because it's expensive, and I don't have a lot of money. Like we did at one time, we actually were doing very well. The security business, we have not got a new contract in 2 months.
No,
So
it's been slow. Nobody wants to pay.
please, and we got people owing us a bunch of money, man. Please pray. Please help us. Pray for our business because it's it's not going down. It's just doing this.
Yeah,
And we need it to
it's
go
not
up
growing.
right now. This is not the time for it to just go, oh, I'm just going to take a break. You know?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, can't do that. So we really need some help with the prayers to get that business going and stuff. Because eventually, you know, that's going to help pay for, you know, better, bigger, whatever stuff for the show. And we have somebody, fingers crossed, who's going to be helping us with some cameras, but we don't know what they are or exactly how they look or what. We don't know. You know, we've had people tell us this before. They're like, yeah, we'll help you, and then that doesn't really happen. So we'll see. Hopefully this time around we'll get these cameras, and I would still like to be able to purchase the ones from Excalibur because she's got some different types of cameras that I know we could use, but I don't have the funds for that. So, like I said, we're trying to get the funds together. So if you feel compelled to join the Patreon to help out, or to, you know, help with a donation or, you know, you can always put the link up to the PayPal. You can just, donate directly to PayPal, that too. But we are trying to get the money together for that. And I don't care what these yokels say out there in YouTube land talking crap. Oh, who's trying to get one? You know, I'm not selling the crap that they're selling. I'm not trying to push a bunch of crap. You know, I'm actually asking for legitimate help so we can get things that we can do to make better content for you. So I got another thing. Here's a few little nuggets that are going to be great. You're going to love this. Okay, there's 3 things I want to say. 3. Well, you know how my fingers are broken, whatever. Yeah. 3 things. That's why I do that. Okay. 3 things. Number 1, I'm going to be on TikTok. We were going to start it today, but I'll be real honest. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I'm kind of like, I'm thinking, am I on? I don't know. So my wife's like, don't touch things. You'll break things. You do not know things and you break and you do that. Literally, that's how she said it. It was all jumbled up. I'm like, I don't understand. She goes, you don't. So she's going to help me with that tomorrow. And so tomorrow afternoon, even though we're not doing a show, I'm going to drop a TikTok episode. So go and join the TikTok. It's the one that has more followers. Don't do the Paranormal roundtable.
Yeah, that's one that Kiam made. Because
Kiam was like, yeah, man, I'm going to make this. And he did a horrible job. I love you as a person, Kiam, but no thanks. Couldn't get that done. So we have that happening tomorrow. So I'll be on TikTok tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be probably every day I'm going to drop a little nugget there. So you're going to want to join the TikTok to get the stories. It's just going to be me telling the shorter stories. And there's like 3 or 4 that I was looking through today about which ones I want to do. Yeah, Amy Krill hits it right on the head. There you go. That's exactly what he did. He totally snoozed before he hit the L. He's like, oh, wait, what am I doing? While he's eating pizza, he ordered Domino's or whatever. I know he was like up here one day eating like, I hate Domino's pizza. That's just me. But he was like eating Domino's or something. And he's like, you want some? I was like, good thing for my waistline. I don't like it because I was like, not that. I don't want that. So that's the first thing. Second thing is Anthony's got a surprise for us. He's putting together the episode we did where we went out and we looked and we found the second or third time we've been out there with the Bigfoot habitation or Dogman habitation. We're not sure which. Mm-hmm. And he's putting it together because we did have a night vision camera. It's not a real good one. It's actually kind of a little not very good one, but it works. You know, It just goes dead quick. So you're like, we need one of those. But he's managed to take the footage that he got and he's turning it into a video so that you can get a better look at the area, because all I had was that little crappy flashlight. Now we have some flashlights, we just didn't have them with us, and we have like 12 of them that are all these stream lights, and we can't find them. So now I'm missing 3 rings. I'm missing, I can't even tell you everything I'm missing a key to one of our vehicles that only has 1 vehicle, so that's a problem. And we're missing our box of flashlights. We don't know where they are. So I'm also missing some of my really informative books that I need. So now I'm going to have to go through literally big boxes, 30 boxes, just, 30 or 40 of them just to try to find these books. And that's going to be a daunting task. So we're going to probably do that either tomorrow or next Saturday. Because next Saturday we're going to be at the Tex will tell me. I don't know what it's called. Lone Star Paracon or something like that. I think that's it. We're going to be up there. So, yeah, that's what's going on. And then the number 3 thing is I'm going to be doing a collaboration with, once again, somebody who's been on my show. I'm going to be on his show at L.A. Marzulli. And that's going to happen real quick, like the next day or 2. And I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to be chopping it up with LA again. And I've been invited to go to a couple of other places to do things, but don't have the time. And right now with business the way it is, I had to weigh the balance. I think I'm going to have to say no on a couple of other projects because I was going to have to go on location to one, and I cannot, because of work obligations, and work is in the toilet. So I really this doesn't do enough for us to be able to, for me to take off to go do these things. I got offered to go on a show, and that involves being flown out to LA for 2 days or possibly 3, which I cannot afford right now. I mean, they'll pay you to fly out there, but then, I just can't do it. I just can't. I mean, I don't have the time. And I can't take away from what I do. Mm-hmm. So, Spooktator Bob, what's up, buddy? I haven't seen you in the chat.
You know what? Speaking of the business, if we can just pause real quick, I need to ask you a question.
Okay, hang on. Just close that door, please, so I can get back on. All right, so Maddie and Anthony are discussing work stuff. Good people to have, though, around you. It's good to have good people around you, because I have a great cast of leadership around me now, which makes my life extremely better. And I have people now that are working on other aspects of the show, and they're doing different things. Nellie has been a huge help. Can't get through it without her. Tony's been stepping up. D's been busy working on the book. He's moving. He's making some progress, man. So the book about our experiences down in South Austin, he had to interview some people. There's going to be some input. I have to put some input into it, and he needs to interview me and 4 other people to really make it come together. Now, I remember I told you I wrote an MK Ultra book. I'm hoping I'm about this close. I'm supposed to be meeting with one of the key witnesses that dropped out, and there was like an entire chapter, and then there was another chapter that was part of what she was talking about, and I had her interviewed by several different people. Well, not several, but a handful of different people, And when I was giving Garetano the information, we went over it and everything, and he thought he said it seemed legit, like it was truthful, like, because it matched up to what these other people had been saying. And so we were like, okay, good, let's run it, let's go, let's get it. And now, so I just got stifled, and it's been what, a year and a half now, maybe?
Yeah.
No, over a year. And so hopefully, and then I got a little bit more things I got to get done, and a few other interviews for the vampire book, and then that's going to be a go. So there may be like 2, 3, 4 books that drop like bam, 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 bam from us. Okay. And it is a team effort. It's a group effort, and we are working together. I'm also getting another book that I'm trying to work on piece by piece. It's about the 27 Club. And it's still another project that I'm doing that's just about the very nature of reality and the paranormal, which will be followed by a companion book on how to break out. And then I also have a project that I've been doing off and on, which is just basically like a book about some of the weird sightings that people have. Some of them you'll find on the show, and some of them you won't. And so that's it. So we're hoping, we were just kind of kicking around numbers, but we said within the next 3 years, we should have 6, 7 books out. My goal was by 2030 to have a dozen books. I think that should probably come to pass. And I'm throwing the number out further because it was originally 2027, but we're going to add 3 years to that. Okay. We're just going to say, let's just do 3 more years, because life happens and you can't control what life wants to do. It just decides, hey, I'm just going to kick you in the balls, and you're just going to deal with it. And you can't really fight back. You just got to roll with the punches, or the kicks, or the chokes, or the slams, or whatever the heck is going on. It's like being in a wrestling ring. What else? Oh, and then, okay, so I was communicating with somebody, and this is very important. Okay, so I reached out to this guy who has written a Beastiary, if you would call it that. I don't even want to say his name or exactly what he's done yet until I can make heads or tails. And I'm waiting for the response. But this guy's got a channel, but it's not real big. He's real big on TikTok. So, a lot of these people, like, you look at their YouTube and you're like, they don't have a big YouTube, but then they have this huge podcast. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Expanded Perspectives or Tony Merkel. They don't have like a huge YouTube presence because they have gigantic podcasts. They don't need it, And so I was looking at some of these people on TikTok, just kind of browsing, kind of not really know what the hell I was looking at, because I've been on there for a couple of weeks, and I probably opened it up 3 or 4 times. And so today I was up till 10 a.m. and then I went to bed. Like, usually I go to sleep and I wake up like 11, 12, whatever. Well, today I went to bed at like 10 a.m. and I was up by 4 or 3:30, which isn't very long, I know. But but I had work to do, and so I was sitting there dealing with work and all this other stuff. And another thing happened. A weird thing happened at one of our job sites. Like a woman's box like exploded. Like on the doorstep, it exploded in one of the apartments. Yeah, I'm not joking, but it wasn't a bomb. It was some sort of like. Some
package?
Yeah, something that was inside the package was unstable. Now, we still don't know for sure what it was, but it popped. I shouldn't say exploded, but it popped.
Maybe it was like a lithium battery or something.
It was, that's what I was going to say. It was probably some kind of battery. That's what they're thinking. And it was an electronic, and it just went, and so but it shot all over the place. And so the police didn't think it's anything. It looks like it was just like it may have gotten really hot or something. So that was weird. So they were asking me if I knew anything about like why the bottom of this woman's door had been, and I'm like, no, it turns out somebody's package exploded or whatever. So that was a weird thing. I had to deal with that today. And I was just like, what? Like Friday, man, Friday. It's Fridays and Mondays. They're the worst. Like just having to deal with stuff, Friday, you got to get everything prepared for the weekend. Then Monday, you deal with all the complaints from the weekend. That's basically what that is.
Yeah.
but it was a battery, you know. Well, it was, Jake. It was pretty violent, you know. But we don't. They don't. They know what. They know this. It wasn't a bomb. They just know that something popped inside of a box. So it did show some damage to the door and to some other stuff, and it was out into the street, into the, it wasn't the street, but like into the parking lot. And they were like, "Whoa, what the hell was that?" So they're like, "Hey, did you see anything?" Now, of course, they got you like leaving early. They got this weird schedule. Well, no, if we're leaving at 4 or 5 in the morning, we don't see everything. You know, I mean, if we could talk to these people and tell them, look, 10 to 6 would be the ideal, you know, but they want all these weird hours, all these clients, you know. Yeah, Barry says my cousin's cell phone exploded. They will explode. I'm not even joking. It happened to my cousin. My cousin, her phone exploded. It's right after she's trying to convince me about how great that company that starts with an A is compared to the company that starts with an S. And I'm like, yeah. This was years ago. It was like 2016. So I took her to the A store, and I'm sitting out there waiting. And she literally, get this, she left her phone in the restroom by the grace of God. And so she leaves to go out, and then she's like, oh, she went back in there to get it. Right before she opened the door, she heard it. Boom. The phone just popped. Is that not divine intervention? Is that not divine intervention? And then I told her, I said, what the heck? What? I told you, they suck. So, you know, everybody loves them, man. They love them, and then they slow down to
Everyone
where
who owns one, like I swear, the screens always break.
they're always
Like
something wrong
every
with them.
single owner of that phone that I've ever seen, their screen's been broken.
Couldn't it be people dropping them though?
Yeah, but like, I mean, the screen must be made of like paper mache or just like garbage. It's always broken, dude. Every single time.
My screen's cracked, but for the first time in the history of having a phone since 1999, I dropped my phone and it cracked. Because I usually go to Phil Balcar, who has what's his store called? Look up his store. I'll give him a shout out.
I think it's just called Austin Cell Repair.
Austin Cell Repair, who just fixes it, and he knows how to do anything when it comes to cell phones. And now he's opening up a gun store. So Barry said they make good assassins. I don't know about that, but so I was over there at this other person's chat, and apparently he was going live, and he was on these multiple different platforms. And guess who I saw over there? I saw Abracadabra. So you may know this person. He created a Beastiary based on his family's history. And it delves into pictures from St. George's Keep. Have y'all seen this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when he was going through the different lists of what the creatures were and what they did, and I was sitting there going like, wow, this is right up my alley. I saw one of these. The reason I think this guy, it could be some really fancy AI. It may not be. It's been around for a few years, but it's really he's hitting the nail on the head about these creatures. I mean, like bam, bam, bam. Like he knows his stuff about these creatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you remember on the show years ago, I actually talked about seeing a book of fairy tales that was from the 15th century, the 1400s, basically. And it was Germanic. It was from Germany, Saxony, I believe. And it was like, it was unbelievable. There were all these pictures of these different types of creatures in these fairy tales. And then there was like this other book that was kind of a, I don't know if it was a companion to, but it looked like it was made and written by the same person, had the same signature on there. And it literally, the creatures that were drawn in that book, I'll never forget. I don't have pictures, copies. I used to have pictures of it in one of my old phones. And, but anyways, they looked a lot like the pictures that this guy has. So either AI or whoever did, if it wasn't him, got it very correct, because some of those pictures, I was like, holy crap, because I saw the pictures. These were pictures that were taken from the 1800s in his book. but allegedly, but the pictures that I saw were drawings. But the drawings looked so much like those, but like this book is something that's completely out of print, you know, just like we were talking about, there was a book that was written about the Earps and Doc Holliday and their war against the cowboy gang. And why, that dude is Ike Clanton, it's like Ike does and says things that, and this guy that chronicled it, that book's out of print. You can't find it anywhere. And so at one point that book was on eBay, and damn it, I had a chance to buy it, and it was $600, and it was in pretty decent shape. And it was written in like 1892.
Dang.
And then he had a follow-up book. The first one was was Billy the Kid and the Range War. The second one was written in 1912 or something. And he interviews Wyatt Earp, who was still alive. He lived to be very old. It was several years before his death.
Just imagine how many books that don't even exist anymore.
They don't.
They just lost the time.
Well, that's why people like Ken Gerhart and Nick Redfern collect these old books, because they know that they go out of print, you'll never find them again.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy. Like this guy had written these books about these people, and it was so accurate. He talks about Creek Johnson. They're different people. Texas Jack, Turkey Creek Jack, and then there's another one named Turkey. There's a guy named Turkey Creek, and then there's Jack Johnson, and then there's Turkey Creek Jack. Now there's 3 different people. And you don't know that. And then you realize there's another one they call Bushwhacker, and that was his nickname. And then there was Bat Masterson, who came to Tombstone, and they don't even talk about him hardly at all. Like he wasn't, but he was around for a part of it, because when all that crap went down, Luke Short, all these other people that you don't really hear about, but they were there at one time or another, and there were clashes with these guys that never got really chronicled, that didn't make it to the documentaries or the movies or the current history of it. But these people, the cowboy gang, was horrible. And we could talk about it one day, but it's just that kind of stuff. Those books are lost to time. But that book that lady, and I bless her heart, I can't remember. Her family was Germanic, and she says, I have a book. So she sent me and Armando these pictures. You remember that? And she had pictures of these books, and there were a few. She had a few like different like video clips of her moving these books pages. They were so old, and it was amazing. Turkey Creek Jack, yeah. Now on the movie Tombstone, they say Turkey Creek Jack, and they said Jack Johnson, and then they said Jack something of they named what town he's from, and they made a distinction that he was a different guy. But then you don't realize that there's like several of these guys that ran around with the Earps, and there was about a dozen guys that were kind of on the Earps team, but the Cowboys had like over 100, the Cowboy gang, and they were just awful. They had this big ranch that they had basically taken from some people, and everything they had was just like ill-gotten gains that their gains had been from usurping people's just being extortionist, and I don't even know, I mean, what you would call it, intimidation, constantly intimidating people and just stealing. They stole cattle and horses, and there was no law there in the Arizona Territory, and they played it up like they were like, oh, we're good old Southern boys, but not one of them had served in the Civil War. None of them, not one of them. Okay. And so they made up a backstory like they were these Southerners or whatever. Well, what's interesting is the Earps had like 4 or 5 of their friends who did fight for the South, even though Virgil fought for the North. So they painted this picture, Ike did, that the Earps were a bunch of Yankee marauders coming down and just trying to, and they were the ones trying to do everything that he was actually doing. And what it was is, they were pissed off at them because they couldn't slap people around and bully people, and they damn sure couldn't bully the Earps and their friends, in particular Doc Holliday and Jack Johnson and those guys. But they could bully everybody else, so they didn't like it. and they wanted to get rid of them, and so they could get them out of the way so they could continue to terrorize everybody. Sound familiar? But this is what always happens. It's kind of like what's happening now, and in a higher up level, people are pissed off because they can't continue to commit fraud and steal, and now they're pissed off, and they want the people that are in charge of investigating everything to go away. It's just history repeats itself, But like what we're going through, this isn't the first Ike Clanton I've dealt with. This is just another in a long line of Ike Clantons. I encourage you to watch the Wyatt Earp and the Cowboy War. It's a very interesting documentary, but even that doesn't do it justice. It doesn't tell the whole story because we've lost these old books that are just out of print. You just can't find them anymore. And I can't remember the name of the book that guy wrote about the Earps, but it was from the little, like maybe 10, 12 years after the turn of the century. And it was a book that my grandfather had that was given to him, and it was very old. And then I had one that I had checked out from the library when I was in a reformatory, and so the pages were as I read it, the pages were coming out, and I've had to do that with a few books that were just so old. But anyway, just delving into the history, it's really interesting. We lose so much of our history. You know what I mean? We lose it. And so, anyways, this guy has this Beastiary, and I don't want to say his name or get into it because I don't know until I'm able to talk to him and work with him or collaborate with him or whatever. By his own words, he says a lot of people send him stuff and try to work with him. And he looks to see if it's worth his time because his time is precious and he has a lot going on, which I can understand and I respect that. So maybe he'll see, hey, this guy looks like it's worth my time. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, he's got a channel, and I think the channel is his name. So I don't want to like throw stuff out there and until we can try to talk or whatever. Because people will run over there and go, it's fake. And then there'll be a big old, whatever. I'd like to get him on and talk to him about this because he seems to be well-versed in what he's talking about. And I can attest that a lot of the things that he says, I can attest to the veracity of his research, at least, is correct about a lot of these creatures and what they do. He makes a distinction between like these hobgoblin elves or hobgoblins / elves and, changelings, and a distinction between them and imps, which is correct. I mean, that there's so many different, because I was thinking about writing a book about that, but putting people's encounters with each individual being and showing the distinction from what we've uncovered and from what the lore says about these creatures and what they do, and like how some people encounter them and they do certain things with them, to them, whatever. And they're not nice. They're not good at all. So yeah. So anyways, that's what's going on. Let's so tonight we have a guest, right? I'm going to bring him on. He's got some things to talk about. Y'all probably know him pretty well. It's Big Tex, Texas Front Porch. And whenever I tell people Tex, I'll talk about his show. I'll say Texas Front Porch. And they always go look up Texas, Texas. And I got to tell them, no, it's Texas, like TEX''S. It's Texas Front Porch. So that's how, So let me get my earbuds in and bring on my guest here. What's up, Tex? How you doing, man?
How you doing, brother?
Good. Busy as hell. I got a million things going on like right now. But what how about you?
Man, if I was any better, it wouldn't be legal.
That's good. I'm glad. So we were on a show. You came on. Okay, so I was on. Let's start with this. I was on BMR's show on Tuesday night, right? which was why we didn't drop the podcast on Tuesday. We dropped it on Thursday. Folks, if you haven't seen or listened to that episode with Ron Moorhead, it's different than the live stream, purposefully so. We have different information there. So anyways, and there's Bigfoot Rob. I see Bigfoot Rob. He's saying hello to people. Hey, Bigfoot Rob. He's
What's
saying
up, Boomer?
Boomer. That's Boomer. And so Boomer is in the chat. So BMR and me, we chopped it up, and Krista was on for a little while from Blondes and Booze. Excuse me. If you don't know who Krista is, she's one half of the Blondes and Booze. Brandy is the other. And so Tex, you came on for like maybe the last hour or so.
Yeah.
And took over for Brandy or for Krista. Yeah. And then we started talking and I was gonna have you come on the week before or whatever. So Paranormal Paul was scheduled to come on tonight, but poor guy's sick. So prayers for Paul, please. Y'all can say some prayers. Paul's not doing well. He needs to he's just not doing good. I noticed when he wasn't on your morning show. Now, see, you told me about your morning show, and I had forgotten about that. And so you get up early like a weirdo, and so I was still up, and so I started listening that morning, and I listened to about an hour, and my eyes went cross. I had to go to sleep because I've been staying up to like 8, 9 o'clock. But then I got to get up by 1 at least and get a bunch of stuff done. So I can't, because I'm up at night. And so you were on and Paul was sick and I was like, uh-oh. So I told Nellie and Anthony and Tony, I said, we're going to have to find a guest for Friday. So I just said, you know what? We'll just throw Tex on there. We thought Bigfoot Dwarf was going to get in touch with me and then, he would come on the show possibly, but he never did. He never got in touch with me. So I had to move on, but hopefully he'll get in touch with me and come on and tell his stuff.
I think he's been having some technical issues.
Well, if you talk to him, just tell him to hit me up so we can get it going for sure. Because I got a lot of people that I want to interview and talk to. So you were talking the other day about something that happened to you. You'd gone on to this guy's farm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or ranch, whatever. Right. And I actually messaged with that guy today. So I'm going to be talking to him, but you had some information. Now, this is something weird. And so do you want to tell us that you can start from wherever, but tell us what you uncovered?
Well, let me back up a little bit because I met this guy at your conference.
Mm-hmm.
He sought us out because he'd had a few people. He was having some what appears to be Dogman issues on his ranch, and he evidently somebody told him to come talk to me, and he asked us to come out there and take a look because the people that had come out and take a look beforehand came out there, poked around, and swore to never come back. So we've been out there 3 or 4 times now. We went out there and did a little scout and found an interesting foot or paw print, however you want to look at it. It was a paw print, but it had a thumb. Now explain that one to me.
Wow.
But
sounds like a
and while we were out there, it was just me, him, and Ranger, which Ranger is one of my trackers that I use. And he's been a part of the team, great friend of mine. Him and Pops, Gary Spike Sr., you'll see he may pop in here.
Gary's been forever.
They're my 2 trackers. And so we don't just walk around, go in and walk around and hoot and holler and
Really? I thought that's what you did.
Well, that's not my style. And spend 2 hours walking down the side of the road or driving around and then call it an investigation. We go and we spend 3, 4, 5 days. Okay. And nights. We don't go sleep in a hotel. You know, we stay on site. So that first visit, we found the paw print, hoof print, whatever you want to call it. And there's an abandoned house that's about half-ass tore down. We were looking around it. It had supposed to have some haints around it and stuff. And Ranger and Ulerson, which you'll see him in the chat probably, which is the guy that is the landowner.
Mm-hmm.
They went in the front door, and I went around the back of the house in the backyard. I went around the house, and I'm poking around back there. And when they're in the house, they hear a door slam and footsteps. Well, there's a hive of bees that are in a wall. And they hollered at me and said, "Hey, watch those bees." And I answered, I'm coming back around the side of the house. And I'm like, what? So something was in the house with them. And it wasn't me. So that's kind of what kicked everything off for us. So we made a trip out there. We spent, 3 nights, 4 days, 4 nights, 5 days, something like that. And I saw something run past the edge of camp. It was about 5 feet tall. Fast. Man, it was fast. But it wasn't as fast as what we're going to talk about. We had Pop saw something standing in camp by one of the trees, by a truck. I may have caught what appears to be Dogman, werewolf, whatever you want to call it, on camera. And that's on my channel. And because we had went out and we split up I split up. The team went to investigate this old homestead that there's nothing left but the foundation. And supposedly the whole family died of dysentery or the
be a horrible way to go, man.
Yeah, it was like dysentery or influenza or something, but the whole family died. And they're buried on that property right next to what used to be the house. There's the old cistern is there. Their refuse pile is there. It's buried now, but so they were investigating that. They saw what they think might have been a porthole open up between these 2 trees. It was kind of gold colored rectangle with some shapes inside of it. And while they were doing that, I took off down this road, walking down this road. And that's where I caught the footage of what may be a Dogman. I was out there by myself. So we started hearing, Monica was out there with us at this time too. We started hearing what some of us describe as bottles clinking together. Some of us describe as a metal clinking.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did you hear it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just heard it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Right when you said bottles clinking together, metal clinking together, we hear bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, I've been hearing it this past few live streams.
Yeah, the last few live streams, you've heard this bang, bang, bang noise.
Oh, interesting.
But
this was happening right on the edge of camp, but all over camp. It was changing locations. And we heard this throughout the whole trip. We could never identify what it was. So that we had that, then of course the storm hit the last day and just obliterated our camp, tore up every tent we had, blew trees over, the whole 9 yards. And so we had to cut the trip short a day. The next time we went out there, it was me and Ranger and Pops couldn't make that trip. trying to remember who all was out there. But anyway, a buddy of mine, Keith, showed up. And my nephew went. That's who it was. I took my nephew. He's 30. He'd never been camping. So where do I take him?
Wow.
I take him out there for 3 days, 4 days, 3 nights.
First time you go camping. Hey, would you like to possibly be eaten by a cryptid? He's like, sure.
So one night we're driving around. It was me, Ullerson, and my nephew, and we're driving around. Because you got to remember, folks, this place is about 2,000 acres of private land, gated. You don't get if you don't have a key to the gate, you don't get in. So the human element is taken out of that, which is fantastic for an investigation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's driving us around at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. We get up on top of the highest point of the ranch, and you can see for miles around. I said, "Hey, let's try something." So I took my phone. I cooked off those howls that most people heard. If you haven't heard them, go look on my channel. Look under howls. It's called Howls and something, or Howls and Handprints. We can get into the handprints if you want later. Those are from Brown Springs. But
how far from Brown Springs is this place?
About an hour.
Okay, so it's not that far.
No.
About 60 miles.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So I stick my phone out the window and cook off these howls, just seeing if anything would happen, And we heard something over in the brush. So I get out of the truck and I tell Uderson and my nephew, I said, "Y'all go for a drive. Give me about 15 minutes." So I take off walking down in these trees down on the side of the hill down here where I heard that stuff. And I start hearing footfalls. Well, then as I walked closer to the footfalls, I started hearing something like gnash its teeth at me. Like it was like, you know how a black bear will challenge you,
Mm-hmm.
Chomping their teeth at you. That's what I heard. So I'm walking to this tree line trying to figure out what this is. And I kind of noticed the headlights bouncing around up on top of the hill. I thought, well, I'll make my way back up there. So I turned around and I'm walking back through these tree lines, and I'm hearing this stuff, and I'm walking up beside a tree line, going back up the hill, and this probably wasn't 10 feet away from me. I hear it. And I'm like, "What the hell was that?" So I walk up, I get in the truck, and we drive around some more. Well, the next night, and we may or may not have caught something. We were running a dash cam the entire drive. And he's going over that footage, and he's going to get back with me. But the next night, my buddy Keith came in, and it was me, Ullerson, his wife, Keith, and my nephew. And there's this pole barn out there that's about half-assed tore down. And it don't have any walls on it, but the that stockade wire, hog wire, some people call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they had running up the walls on the inside. Well, that's all that's left, that in the roof, tin roof. So we get out of our trucks and we're walking towards this pole barn. And Ullerson had been telling me that he just recently found this barn, and it just made him nervous. He didn't like the feel around it. I'm like, well, so we went and checked it out. We went up there during the day. I really didn't get no, hinky feeling from it or nothing like that. Well, we get out of our trucks and we're walking towards the pole barn. This is late at night. And I see something. And I don't know what else to call it except a pale crawler. I'd never seen one before.
Mm-hmm.
But it went up the side of this, the side of this barn, and on top of the roof without making a sound, and it was so fast. It was like, but it was man sized. It looked like Spider-Man crawling up the wall, and it was like ash colored, but it was a little darker gray, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, what? I mean, I stopped in my tracks, and I'm like, what the F was that? Did y'all see that? And Uderson asked me what I saw, and I described it to him. The blood ran out of his face. It scared him because he has been dealing with these things since he was young.
Wow.
These things were tapping on his window saying, come here, from a very young age. So there's these steps these preformed concrete steps that you see that you can buy for job trailers and that type of thing, mobile homes. And they're sitting over beside the barn, you know, like they hadn't been used and they just put them over there. And I thought, well, maybe I can look on top of the barn if I get on top of these steps. And I made a joke. I said, hey, let's do what everybody tells us not to and walk upstairs that go to nowhere in the woods. So I go up to the top of these steps and I'm looking on top of the barn as best as I can. And I'm trying to, and I'm actually talking to this thing. I was like, what are you? Where are you? And you know, what are you doing? That type of thing. And so I don't see anything. So I turn around and I start to walk back down the steps. I thought it was a briar that I got my foot wrapped up in, but I went head over heels off that third step and landed about 6-8 feet from the steps.
Wow.
Of course, where do you land? You land in a patch of briars.
Oh.
So
sounds like a good time.
Fantastic, man. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But you know, it felt real good, adjusted everything when it hit the ground. But you know, luckily the briars broke my fall, right? That type of thing. Well, what I didn't know, one, there wasn't any briars on the steps. None. Two, Uderson's wife had seen a gray hand-shaped thing reach around from behind the steps and grab my pants leg. And when I fell, he caught a glimpse of this gray figure darting off behind the steps and into the trees beside the barn. So I get up, I'm mad. And I said, all right, that's it. I said, y'all get in the trucks, drive off. It'll be about 10, 15 minutes. And I start calling this thing out after they left me alone. I start calling this thing out and challenge it. And as usual, these things are cowards, right? But in the middle of cussing this thing and calling it out and calling it everything, I hear a tree break across and there's a gas well right next to this barn. And I hear a tree break right across the pad right over there. And I'm like, all right, you want me to come over there? I'll come over there. So I start walking over there, and they were parked about 150 yards away from me. I didn't know it, but they were parked, and I ran up on them. But Ulerson had seen. It's been called a white one or a silver one, but it's I can't remember what he calls it. He's got a name, but he saw the Dogman, the big one, standing back in the trees watching.
Same place.
Yeah. I was walking towards the trucks, and it was standing in the trees behind the trucks. He caught it in the rearview mirror.
Before, let me ask you a question before you go any further. Have you noticed, if anybody in the audience has noticed, these creatures share the same habitat? They always seem to pop up in the same places. Just not even like a week ago. In fact, I know exactly what day it was. It's been about a week and a half. Somebody sent me a story of seeing these two crawlers attacking what at first they thought was a four-legged animal, but they were tearing it up. And they didn't know what they were looking at. They thought it was two white cats fighting with a big, furry, hairy thing. And when this thing managed to stand up, it was a Bigfoot type creature, and it was being mauled by two of these crawlers. But it wasn't the big, by the person's own admission, though. This happened in Mississippi. They said that it wasn't. The Bigfoot wasn't like we've heard of Bigfoot, Bigfoot. I mean, we've gotten stories of big ones. I don't think I've ever gotten a 12-foot, anything like that, but 9, 10, like crazy tall, huge, 5-6 feet wide. This one was only about 7 foot, so I think it was a smaller, maybe a younger one, and they were killing it. And so the guy felt compelled to shoot at these creatures. And it didn't do a whole lot. It got one of them's attention, and then it kind of like crawled up a tree and then spun itself around and then came crawling towards him. And then he lost sight of it, and it scared the crap out of him. So he got in his truck. Now, this is a recent story. It happened like 12 years ago, back in like 2013. That's amazing. It seems like 2013 was like yesterday. It's like 12 years ago. But he said that it was enough to keep him out of the woods. And get this, I'm going to tell you where it happened. It happened in southern Oklahoma. Yeah. So, I mean, but that's for another story. But the bottom line is that you get these creatures, these entities, and their habitats sort of overlap. I wonder if this person now, and like I said, I'm going to be talking to this guy.
Yeah.
But his ranch probably has an opening somewhere, I would say, to down there.
It's very possible. I mean, or somewhere. I don't know. Because I don't know where these critters come from. Or these beings, entities, whatever you want to call them.
Depending on how physical they are, really.
Yeah, but I don't think what I ran into as far as the crawlers go, I don't think that was physical at all. That's metaphysical, all supernatural, whatever you want to call it, all day long.
Well, they all are. But then, like I said, that's why I said it depends on how physical they are. Because like I was talking about that guy that had the pictures from the Vatican,
right?
St. George's Keep. That, and I know 100%, I'm convinced that there is a St. George's Keep, and that there was something down there under the Vatican. Now, whether he has, I don't know. But those beings, like he did talk about them on one of his little. I watched I couldn't even get that. I watched like half of an episode, but he was describing them as like having a more of a spiritual nature, but they can catch them because they become physical, and then you can actually imprison them. But some of them were imprisoned with chains, and then others were, you could see like there were like these markings, these runes or whatever you want to call them, that were around their cell. That was what was keeping them in place. It wasn't, you couldn't encapsulate them with chains. You could try, but they can go back to their spiritual nature, and so that's what's so weird about all of this, is that these things have this ability to kind of move in and out of the physical. So something was able to become physical enough to trip you, but it's still a spirit. And that is the big argument. Like, I was at the Bigfoot conference. I think you were there too with Boomer. And we were at the conference, and which one was that?
Jefferson, I believe, or
Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
Were you at the one in Mineola? I don't know if
yes, we were there too.
It might have been Mineola, because I kind of got in an argument with a guy there. And Ken, Gerhard, Lyle Blackburn, Nick Redfern were all right there, and there was somebody that we were all kind of in a disagreement with. I'm not going to get into what it was, but he said something really stupid because on top of everything else that was going on, and I was like, this is best you could just shut up. I was just kind of telling the guy like, but he continued to babble on, and he said something about, well, I believe in cryptids, I don't believe in ghosts. And everybody just kind of laughed because, yeah, I mean, even though these people are like people who, with the exception of like Redfern, a lot of those people there, like Woolheater, of course, I mean, most people are very physical, crypto type people. But it's changing. People's opinions are changing quickly, and because now what we're coming up is, we're starting to see. You still have these diehard people who just don't want to accept that these things can be a sub. They don't understand it. They don't want to understand it. And they're trying to look at it through a very earthbound, physical, modern scientific lens. And it's really impossible to even do that.
They're taking a very safe view of it, because once you take the physical aspect out of it, all bets are off.
Yeah.
They can no longer punch this thing in the nose, which makes them feel a little bit safe. But once you take that part out of it, you're dealing with a whole different. It's a different ball game, Yeah. And I don't know. I think, and Josh, me and you've had many conversations about this, about the physicality of Dogman, and Bigfoot and all these critters that I call. What I saw when I was 16, which everybody calls a Dogman. I called it a werewolf when I saw it, just like you did. I can't get my mind wrapped around why something that isn't physical would need to do the things that this thing did. Okay, why would it need to dive over a barbed wire fence?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. It's not like this thing was a long way away from me when I saw it. It was 25, 30 feet away, and it was daylight. I like to say I know what I saw, but that's the problem right there. None of us know what we're seeing. We speculate because of what it looks like to us. And you're right. A lot of people are turning that corner from the flesh and blood, pure flesh and blood aspect to some kind of supernatural aspect to these things.
Yeah. I mean, because what else is there? I mean, text.
Well, I'm on the fence, man. I cannot go one way or the other. And I've seen so many things. And to your point, to where you were talking about, Nick and Lyle and Ken and all of any researcher worth his salt or worth their salt. Gotta get my pronouns right. Worth their salt. I don't want Nick and I don't want Ken and them upset at me because I didn't use the right pronouns for them. But they're
I don't think it's
they will tell you that they've ran into things out in the field during investigations that they cannot explain. Everybody would love to explain these things away as physical because it makes it safer.
Yeah, it makes you feel better.
Yeah, it's a security blanket. It's what it is. Just like that pistol everybody carries.
Well, it's not just that. I think a big part of it too is that we could get a better grasp or a handle on it.
No, absolutely.
If it was all physical, we could just go out there and try to find evidence.
Yeah.
But these things aren't animals. Cryptozoology, the term cryptid has been kind of hijacked by the paranormal community to say, hey, this is a cryptid, but it's really a man-like creature running around. It's not a cryptid. I'm sorry. Anything running around on two legs that's built like the upper body of a man with these backward bent legs, that's not a cryptid to me. I mean, and Ken said it at the conference. I mean, he was like, look, or I've been to multiple conferences with him, and I'll be at another one with him Saturday. But I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
at our conference that we did in Fort Worth, and he said, "Look, this to me is not. It's not a physical. You know, I don't know." He goes, "They do things physical. They have these traits like a physical being,
Mhm.
but." We would have evidence, but that speaks to the same thing for Bigfoot. I mean, people will talk about they have young and they have babies, and they'll say the same thing about Dogman.
Yep.
But where are they? I mean, where is it? I mean, people see this stuff going on all the time, but they just can't get a handle on it because, like your case is like what happened to you most recently. And I'm not talking about your Dogman experience,
Right.
but like what happened to you with this crawler. It did something physical, but then it seems more like a phantom.
Yep.
And that is the $1,000,000 question. Is it a physical phantom or is it a spiritual phantom? And I'm going to tell you the truth. It's a metaphysical phantom. Look at these beings, folks. And to me, this is what I believe and what you're dealing with. And I think that they're the other end of the spectrum from us. We are predominantly physical. Because we live in the physical world, we spend most of our time in the physical world. We do go into the spiritual world because our soul is what powers this body and this mind, and it's a spiritual thing, and you can come out of your body. These
Mhm.
creatures are the exact opposite. I think they spend most of their time in the spirit and they manifest into the flesh. And to I think us coming out of our body is very much like them coming out of their spirit. You see what I'm saying? Like the opposite is happening. And so
That's a great look at it. I mean, it really is, because that's kind of where I'm at with it.
mhm.
I mean, because whatever these things are, and I think that term that you use, metaphysical. I think that's the term I think that's what we need to start using instead of the damn term woo. I hate that term.
Well, the woo was only
Oh my gosh.
it was brought about as an insult, like so they could
Yeah.
insult
Yeah.
everybody and say, "Oh, it's the woo woo," like
Yeah.
woo, whatever. And it just, the last person that said something like that to me at a conference, that I assure you, they'll never say it to me again. I just kind of was like, really?
It's like
Um,
wrestling this fate.
yeah, I'm just the same, and I'm the same person on here that I am anywhere else.
Yeah. You are.
Okay, you've met me. I don't pull any punches, and I mean, I'm not going to be like one of those people that's scared to go outside because somebody wants to take it outside. I mean, I'm not a
Right.
confrontational person that way, but I've had some people act like real, a-holes to me. And I'm like, look, dude, I'm not going to take your shit. It's just the
Yeah.
way it is. I know what I know, and they can pick at me online. But if we go to a conference and you're there, I guarantee you're not going to pick at me. I know that that's not going to happen. And I've had some people have to backtrack, because they can talk over or down to you, And I got, I think us, I don't know, what do you think, Anthony? When we first came into this, we got bullied a lot.
Oh yeah, you get kicked around.
You got kicked around
Yeah.
and called, made fun of, whatever. Like, it's not like it stopped, but now it's just a big joke. It's like, who cares? Like, who are
Yeah.
these people? They've become the obscure nothing compared to what we've done. But I hung in there and I was just like, I don't care what these people say or call me. I know what's real. And eventually I knew that the information that I had and the hard work and dedication that I had to this, it was going to pay off because my goal in all of this has been to make a serious contribution toward the uh, furthering of the education from the information that we're getting. And I think I've done that. I think we as PRT have done that. And we're continuing to do that. And when you come on and you talk about this is very important, I'm glad because we were trying to figure out when we could get you in. And not that I wanted Paul to be sick, because I love Paul, but it was fortuitous because
Yeah.
having you come on after on the heels of what just happened, I think this is important. I think people What? Somebody said George Foreman just passed
Yeah,
away.
I saw that. George Foreman just passed away.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, dude! He's like one of my. He was my favorite boxer of all time.
Yeah, man, I hate to hear that.
Ah, what a nice guy.
Yeah,
Oh man,
class act.
I knew a lot of people who knew him. I did not personally know him, but I know a lot of people who did, and that's a shame. He was such a good guy. Really gave his life over to the Lord, did the right thing, and was a good guy. But so, anyways, sorry for interrupting, but that's crazy. What a titan of the boxing community. I'm a big boxing fan, and so anyways, it's one of those things where people like there were people that were. It was getting to the point where people were sending us messages, and they basically picked a fight, like a war with us, because we wouldn't back down on what we believed. And they were saying things like, well, your belief in this woo has made the Dogman community look stupid. You're talking about Bigfoot and saying that it could be, whatever, and talking about UFO reports at the same, it looks stupid. And I was like, I think your closed-mindedness and your silly hanging on to what is essentially the Patterson Gimlin film and a few tracks is silly and nothing. It's stupid. And the mainstream is never going to accept you. Mm-hmm. So until you can get them a specimen, which that's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. Now, we do know that there have been giant skeletons that have been almost, like every time one of them pops up, they run up and they grab them and they take them, and then we don't end up with it. And we've talked about that, Tex. We have friends that have unearthed things that they just said, well, you can't have that. What if this wets in your eye? We're saving you.
Yeah.
It's like, I know what they're doing. They're stealing it because they want its DNA. They don't want us to have it. And there are all these different people who have all these different theories about what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And I can tell you this, there is a Nephilim bloodline that flows, going all the way back, and they're trying to build something, the modern times, right? And so now we're running into I don't know how many people I've interviewed now, but like Joe Barger is one of the most notable, just using him as an example, who are running into what could be assets that have been created. And that thing could be a genetically modified body of a Nephilim, from a fallen bloodline that's being used now and weaponized as a soldier. Think of all these bases like Leonardwood and what's it called? The other one out in California, Edwards Air Force Base, mm-hmm. or Fort Campbell. You have all these reports, and they're always around these military bases. And why is that? Like yesterday when we did the show with Ron Moorhead, it was a pre-record we did a couple of weeks ago. But Ron, we were talking about, he says, why are they seen around power plants? If they're just physical beings, why are so many of them seen around sources of energy, like electronic energy? Mm-hmm. Why do watch batteries go dead? Why do flashlights go dead? Why is it that all these things, why? Because an actual physical being, a Bigfoot, if it's a physical being, you're not going to have a flashlight go dead just because you're in its presence. You're not going to have camera malfunctioning, which happens quite a bit.
Yeah,
there's all these weird things.
We set one. I personally believe that Bigfoot is a physical creature, but we've got all these different phenomena, like you said earlier. Why do they inhabit the same areas? Mm-hmm. I think Bigfoot is a physical creature, but I think there's something else out there too that is roaming around the same places that these. I don't know if they're attracted to these critters or these critters are attracted to that energy. I don't know what's going on. And I may be completely off base, And you may be completely right that Bigfoot is not a physical, a physical, just a physical creature. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, just a physical creature.
Yeah. The fact is, we don't know. And we have what we believe, you know, and that's a big difference. The big difference between a lot of these people out here and, you know, say our I want to say our group, because that's the way I look at it. I mean, there's a lot of people that we're all good friends, and we all happen to have YouTube channels. But we're able to have a different opinion from each other, but we're able to have a discussion and a conversation just like me and you are.
Yeah.
Because if we're not able to go, what if, we're stuck in the mud like we have been for years.
Yeah, decades.
And I'm totally open to Bigfoot being not just a physical creature.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the evidence personally to sway me that way yet. Not that I won't, because the first time I have one mind speak to me, I'm going to be waving my woo flag loud and proud. But from what I've seen, I think we're dealing with different phenomenon, and we may be shoving it into a Bigfoot box.
Yeah, that's another thing. Now you have this creature, you know, what we know as the Gugwe.
Uh-huh.
And we need to stop, you know, we need to stop with this, you know, oh, well, Skinwalker, you know, I remember Elijah Henderson at one point saying that he said they were talking about Skinwalker and these other YouTubers or whatever, you know, one of them, which was my friend, but they got all offended by him, not offended, but they were like, well, it's not a Skinwalker because only one particular tribe. Doesn't matter. I mean, this is
That's just what the Navajo call it.
This here is a coffee, okay?
Yeah.
But what does it matter? You could just call it a drink,
a beverage.
A beverage. These are
You
all
call it coffee. Somebody else calls it, you know, Java. It's the same difference.
Joe, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's still the same thing. So just call it the same, so people know what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
What if? And I've said this 1,000 times, but what if, Josh, the same thing that we're seeing and we're calling Bigfoot, Dogman, Rake, and all this kind of stuff, you know, are no more than just what was being called the Fae 1,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
or several hundred years ago. We just got different labels for it.
Yeah, you know, Lori Gibbs says here. She says something. She says it's a. Well, I don't see the comment now, but in the chat, she says that it's a primate. Here it is. She says Bigfoot is physical and primate. Well, okay. And then you said something below about it possibly being spiritual, whatever. Let's stop for a second and let's think about this. Probably primate, yeah, in some form or another. It is a primate type being,
As much as we are.
Yeah, and it could be the legends behind what we know of as ogres,
Mm-hmm.
which is where.
Troll.
Yeah, I've always wondered this because, you know, Tolkien got the idea for orcs from the Icelandic, the Danish, and all the Scandinavian legends of ogres.
Right.
Ogres were a being that existed before mankind. And according to the Norse legends, Thor was the protector of mankind and the main antagonist against mankind in the early days of their history in Midgard was the ogre. The ogre race was trying to destroy the race of man. So Tolkien got his ideas of these orcs, orcai, you know, or goblins. Because the goblins were kind of like They were like the elves that had been turned or whatever, but they at times he kind of used them interchangeably with orc, but the orcs really were like ogres. They were these big lumbering oafs, and they were just like an orc rabble, he would call them, you know. And they didn't have a real sophisticated society, but the one thing that these subnatured beings all had in common was that they hated mankind and they wanted mankind destroyed. There was something there that was a rift that had been created way back. There was this schism, and they wanted to destroy man. And that was the ogre or orc's main objective. Now, in the Icelandic legends, the Scandinavian legends, that's what they're doing. It's basically like they are trying to supersede man and overcome mankind. And so I wonder if you look at like these legends, you know, from a different lens, you start to see and maybe, you know, what we're dealing with and what we've always been dealing with is something that sees us not just as competition, but there's this like actual hatred
Yeah.
that's there for us because they were supplanted by mankind. I know that's the Jinn, that's their problem. What's interesting is that there was another race of beings that was called the Jan, and the Jan did not like. They didn't dislike the Jinn, but they were supplanted by the Jinn, and so they're actually the Jan or Jan, depending on which dialect of Arabic. They actually are ambivalent towards humans, and they'll help people. They've been known to actually go and chase jinn off from the desert, and some will say, "Well, no, that's not really. That's just a different race or species of jinn that are actually friendly toward man." Now you have that too, but
Right.
these beings have actually, communicated with people and said, "No, we're from before them. We were here before the jinn." Now you have something that's before them, even. See, and it goes back and back and back. And then if you read in the hadith, you read about how the jinn have neighbors, and you're going like, what? Like, they have this, like, we're on one side of them in the third dimension, they're in the fourth dimension, and then there's this other being, these beings that are their neighbors from the fifth dimension, and they are distinctly different because it says that these are the neighbors of the jinn. So you have these different types of beings. You have what when Tiamat supposedly created her army, she created the hairy man and the minotaur. They were all created together at the same time, the scorpion man, so that they could fight and overcome Marduk. And so you have all these legends going way back to antiquity, to going back to these ancient cultures around the world of these beings of some kind that were manifested or created or brought over to our realm to do war, and predominantly to fight one another. But it seems like they are most comfortable when they're just hurting us because they don't like people. And because I think because we've overpopulated and made it to where we're everywhere, and that to me would be a double-edged sword. Now, folks, I'm going to ask you to think outside the box for a minute and tell me what you think of this. We raise cows, sheep, goats, chickens, for milk and for eggs and things like that, but also for food, meat, or clothing. Different reasons people have these animals, and that's fine to have that, right? It's an energy source. That's your energy source. But imagine, okay, if you're a human being and you need those animals to survive, they're a form of sustenance. But what would happen if the entire world was just inundated and overrun with goats, sheep, pigs and cows. And everywhere you look, they're everywhere. They're just everywhere. And it's like, it doesn't matter whether you use them as food or energy or not. They're just all over the freaking place, and you have nowhere to go where you can get away from them. It's very rare that you can get away from one of these animals. I think you would start to become very uncomfortable, and you would start to become aggravated, and it would probably get to the point where you would detest them, you know, because there's too many of them, and there's just nowhere to go. I mean, so you could look at it like that, like even though we're a food source for them, like this energy or whatever, they still don't like us because we're just all over the damn place. They can't get away from us. And there's 8 billion of us now, and we've overpopulated, you know, and so at least in their eyes, then they would probably like to cull us down, like just like the Georgia Guidestones or the people in charge. They're manipulating those people to cull us, to get us down to a reasonable, manageable number. Plus, we're taking energy ourselves. We take an enormous amount of energy from the earth. We were talking the other day about the vril.
Yeah.
Then we got off on you know, they were people were saying, well, the vril is actually the type of energy. Yes, I know, but these reptilians that are vampiric, they are actually the vril too. That's what they call them. So because they suck the energy out of things, they're parasites, as you said, Tex.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. I mean, you have these entities who, for whatever reason, I mean, have a disdain for mankind. And in some ways, I can see that it's justified. I'm not saying that they don't have a right to be angry, but by the same token, most of them seem to be evil, you know, and so too bad, you know, it is what it is. But this entity that did what it did to you, it did it. There was no reason for it.
Nope.
It did it out of spite or meanness because that's what they do, you know. The crawler, I have fielded bunches and bunches of reports of these crawlers. I have two, maybe now saying that there was a third one because I looked it up in preparation for the show. I only have two where this thing seems to be sort of nice. And then a third one, which I don't know what it is. The third one, now this one I'll tell you very quickly. It's not a very long story. But this woman was going hiking every day, and there was this pale crawler, and she was with her dogs, I guess. And this crawler was watching her like all the time, and it did it for like, from what I remember reading, it was like months or something, and it didn't mess with her. And this is an email. I got to go back and reread it. I just kind of glanced over it, but and I can't remember who sent it. I don't know, but I just remember reading it, and it was like, maybe it's right there on top. I can find it. But anyway, they said that this thing never really did anything to her. And then one day it was frantically knocking on the glass. And then later she sees this really big, menacing, mean one that actually tried to do something. So they're thinking that this thing may have been trying to help her or warn her. So there's not many, you know, stories of these things being good.
No,
You know,
those are the first two I've heard, and the first one
yeah,
I've heard.
yeah, that one. No, I have two others, but and I'm not saying that people aren't being honest. I would try to say maybe they're a little confused because one of the stories I got was of it chasing a Dogman away from it. And so, but this Dogman type creature wasn't just a normal, you know, run of the mill like animal. It was this really mean, nasty. It was one of those really mean, nasty ones. It looks weird, and it looks like it's like kind of some kind of possessed thing with a big snout, you know. And this thing happened to just. I don't think it was protecting. I think it just got in the way. And that Dogman just attacked that instead of the person. And so I don't think the crawler was trying to help. And then there's one where, and I could go through and try to give all the details of these stories, but there was another one where a person claims that one saved them.
Mhm.
Um,
I think that's kind of just like a byproduct of whatever happened. Like that probably wasn't really the point.
yeah,
To save that person.
yeah. I don't think that there, and beyond that, I don't know of any that are positive. People might see them and they don't attack them. That doesn't mean. I mean, you could go to Africa and look at lions and they're there. It doesn't mean they're going to attack you, but they could and they will.
I mean, you can see divers diving with great white sharks and just kind of hanging out with them. It doesn't mean that they're not vicious animals who won't eat you. Just means that they're not going to do it right then and there.
Yeah.
You weren't on the menu at that particular time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we start talking about these crawlers, aside from what you just shared, everything I've ever heard was negative. As far as them being, but there's countless reports of them duking it out with Dogman. There's a, if we go by the reports and we take them for what they face value, there's a bad relationship there at the least between those two critters. Okay. I agree with the whole, it was probably just an accidental. It wasn't trying to save them, but by running the Dogman away, but it's just, it's like, okay, I don't like this thing over here, but I hate this thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was taking down the worst of the two that was there.
It's almost like they're natural enemies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I've gotten several reports of them killing Dogman or being killed by Dogman, or I think for the most part, and this goes the same thing with Bigfoot and Dogman. I don't personally think that there's a relationship there as far as a partnership. I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think they tolerate each other much like any other apex predator around, because they don't want to expend the energy to fight. They don't want to chance getting injured or killed.
Mm-hmm.
Unless does it happen? Absolutely. It's no different than, well, does Bigfoot kill people? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
In my book.
Well, look at the Headless Valley. There's people like, there's no documented cases of them. Yeah, there's no documented cases of an orca killing people either, but I'm sure they do. I mean, it happens.
Well, they're not documented because these people weren't around to tell the story.
Yeah, that's what I think.
The whole missing phenomenon, are they the all catch-all blame for it? No. Are they a portion of it? Absolutely. Dogman, Bigfoot, and everything else you can think of that we're talking about, I think, has a hand in all that missing phenomenon. But friendly? No, I don't think these things are friendly at all. At the very least, they like to torment us.
Yeah.
But are they able? Maybe we talk about them affecting the physical world. That's no different than a poltergeist. They can affect the physical world. People start talking about, why don't we have, where's the body? That's one of my favorite questions that I get asked when people, start talking about the whole Bigfoot phenomenon. And well, if you believe in Bigfoot, where's the body? Why don't we have one? We have them, but we're not privy to those that are studying them.
Yeah.
I got news for you. There ain't a critter out there that we don't have some locked away somewhere. Just like you were saying, anytime we find a giant skeleton, whoop, same thing. Look what happened to the giant of Kandahar.
Well, yeah, or any giant that shows up.
Yeah.
They immediately want to go snatch it up. And Liz's Lair says, I heard a story about a military guy and his sergeant attacked by a dogman. Long story short, a military man with clearance said they need dogman to kill those crawlers. Maybe, because maybe these crawlers have some kind of I don't know, you hear about them quite a bit, especially in underground areas, caverns, things like that.
Graveyards.
And maybe they take these dogmen and they weaponize them, and they turn them into some sort of, asset that they can use to attack these creatures.
Yeah.
And that could be the case. I mean, there's no way to really know what they're doing other than people who've claimed to have shot these. Now, one of the things I've heard about dogman in particular, and there's different kinds. Everybody thinks there's different kinds, and I'm kind of in that box too. There are these dogman creatures that look like people that turn into some sort of bestial whatever, almost like a demonic possession. They look like a beast man or something. And then you have these ones that look like straight up like from a werewolf movie. And then you have these other ones that look like they're from some sort of science experiment. With these huge oversized heads, these giant shoulders, these massive thighs, and they just look like they're abnormal, like they're on steroids. And then you have these still another group that looks straight up demonic.
Yeah.
So you have these different classifications, and I used to think that chart that they had, it was some kind of stupid chart.
Yeah, the different types of dogman.
It was just so type A, B, C. It's the stupidest shit I ever saw. I just never adhered to that. I still don't.
No,
and if you do, folks, that's fine. Keep believing whatever that is. But that was a very primitive and really early effort to try to classify these things.
Yeah.
You had this hyena looking one, and then you had this other one that looked like an ape or whatever. It quite simply just different types look different, whatever. I mean, but I think there's more than just that, because this Gugwe type creature, which it really seems it's more like primate like, but it has this big old snout, and it's
just like different species being like spliced with the canine DNA or something.
Yeah, it seems like it's very much like a Heinz 57, you know what I mean? Like, and like the things that this Gugwe does, and some of these native tribes, and I've talked to people before that these Gugwe are actually like some sort of type of species. Like they're not really, and they don't really know exactly where they come from, and there's not this. Some of the tribes have this really long history of these kind of creatures, and then some of them say that they're a newer thing, but that could be a migrational thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe this was, and of course you have one. You have a predecessor that could be historically, prehistoric, the Dinopithecus.
Mm-hmm.
The Dinopithecus could be a very good culprit. I look at this case that I covered years ago, and I always bring this one up, the Mason County, those kids in Mason County, they're all adults now. They were teenagers at the time. And the oldest one, I think, is nearly 30 years old or something like that, 32. I don't know. I feel old now. But they were teenagers, and they were firing off fireworks up on this ridge, and these two creatures came out. They each describe them as being kind of wolf-headed, but like baboonish, the way they describe them. But they were pretty Like when I showed them pictures of the Dinopithecus, it didn't. The Dinopithecus didn't match exactly what they saw, but think about it though. Dinopithecus would have, by the time of the Younger Dryas, would have been, pretty much gone. So, you have a descendant, still the same creature. And now, if people don't believe in evolution, they don't want to. They don't want to use the word evolution. So let's just call it adaptation. And adaptation, that they look different to match the environment that they now lived in. One of the reasons why animals go extinct, folks, is not just because humans are nasty, bad people. That's part of it. But there's also their environment changes. Creatures go extinct all the time. I mean, and some of them, thank goodness, because, well, they say it's still around. The god bear, they call it the god bear. It's the short-faced cave bear, but there's these ones in Kamchatka that they call the god bear, 12 to 15 feet tall when they stand up, and they weigh like 2,500 pounds or some ungodly. It's just unreal. And there are soldiers who have ran into these things. From the military of Russia, and they claim they swear up and down that these things, and now they have these declassified documents. You can go and read about this. And somebody reminded me that the other day. I think that was an expedition in 1980. I want to say 82, but don't get me, it might be wrong. But this god bear killed like 12 people before they managed to, and they didn't kill it. They just shot it enough to where it ran off, and maybe it went and died. But you could make the argument that this was some sort of like amazing cryptid creature that couldn't be killed because they were shooting it with AKs and it wasn't dying.
Yeah.
But who knows what that thing is really made of? You know what I mean? Like, and if anybody's ever fired an AK-47, and I have on multiple occasions, a 7.62 by 3.9 round,
it's pretty destructive.
Pretty potent, and it's coming out like, especially if it's a military grade AK Kalashnikov. These people were hitting it with that, and the report was like they shot it over 50 times. So then it went off, and then they didn't retrieve a body. There was blood everywhere and flesh, but where did it go? And then they call it the god bear. The Inuits had a name for this thing too. It was they called it the god bear, but it was a polar bear type creature, and it was supposedly like 15 feet and 3,000 pounds. It was unstoppable. They couldn't kill it. It would go into their village, and if it continued to harass, they would just pack up and move. These things were grabbing, whales and seals and pulling them up out of the ice and just eating them. Like it was unbelievable the things that they claimed these things could do. Pretty sure that this is some sort of prehistoric throwback, but that goes back to the whole thing we were talking about with the ogre. The ogre is some sort of prehistoric throwback that looks like a primitive man. It doesn't really look from the descriptions that we get from these sagas, that doesn't really look like a big hairy Bigfoot type creature.
Right.
It just looks like a really giant, oversized man. And if you listen to some of the stories, they were like, anywhere from 8 to 10 feet tall. And Thor was knocking the shit out of him with his hammer and basically cracking him over the head, and they tried everything. Like they had a level of intelligence too, which would speak to the fact that they probably weren't. Now we know Neanderthal weren't as stupid as we thought they were. They had burial rites. They used tools. They had a language, and they had they took care of. There would be ones that were injured. They took care of them because they would live several years with this wound, which doesn't happen if they're just a bunch of savages. But there was this one story I remember. Thor was tricked into going over this lake, and it was where the head of Jormungandr was. And so the ogre tricked him, and I don't remember how he did it. I don't remember the whole story, but I just know that it was like he got him to row a boat out into the middle of this water, and then he started slapping the water. And Thor's like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to, made up some kind of excuse,
Uh-huh.
And then the next thing you know, the ogre knocks Thor off into the water and takes off in the boat. And Jormungandr awakens, and it was I think it was the first or second encounter he had with this thing. Because they were always trying to get him killed and get him to fight with this Jormungandr or Surtur, and these are basically representations, I guess, of Jormungandr would be like Leviathan, like from the water, and Surtur was the fire elemental, right? And Fenrir represented. Now, Fenrir was weird. They never really could decide if he was the element of earth or if he was the element of the sky, because he lived in the sky and he could come to the earth. So he may have been, both. And eventually, of course, he eats the sun, causing Ragnarok. But this, whatever it was an encounter, and of course, Thor escapes and gets out of the water and finds that ogre and kills him. Now, what he was doing in the middle of the water with this dude, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know why he would trust him. It was something, he was looking for someone or something, and supposedly this ogre was like, "Oh, I'll help you," and he didn't think that they'd be stupid enough to try him after how many times he'd beat the crap out of them. But you got to figure that dumb people keep trying to do the same thing because it's called insanity. They just keep trying the same thing over and over
One of
again.
the most dangerous things you can do is underestimate how stupid someone can be.
Yeah, and so people are really stupid, and they're not really people; they're ogres, right?
Yeah.
And so Thor eventually finds him though and busts his head open, and supposedly he killed over 10,000 ogres in his life. And he paved the way for humanity because the ogres were a constant threat. They would raid villages and they were cannibals. They ate people. And then for all intents and purposes, they just looked like giant, deformed, ugly people with the protruding bottom mouth, and they had these teeth, which is where the ogre becomes the orc. But there was another thing where I don't remember if it was Loki. He tricked Thor, and he said, "You can't lift this." And Thor, he lifted it up, and it turned out it was a giant cat that was actually Jormungandr's underbelly, and he thought it was the paw of a cat or something. I don't remember. There was all these stories, and they were always trying to mess with him, And the really sad thing was, there were people who were on the side of these other creatures, and Thor was actually trying to protect humanity from them. But these ne'er-do-wells were always managing to find some dumbass people that were willing to help them in their little schemes. And I always thought, how stupid is that? Are you going to get rid of the guy who's protecting you from all this other bullshit? And then you're over here like, yeah, let's help those dudes get rid of that guy. But like you said, never underestimate just how stupid people really are.
Yeah.
But the point being is that there's this whole primitive world that existed before what we know of, and the people who were in that world were trying to make sense of it. And of course, when it talks in Genesis about these men that became mighty men, men of renown, men of old, that's who they're talking about. It's Hercules and Thor and all these other different entities or beings. And they were real. They were real beings. I mean, this isn't a comic book joke, Yeah, they've turned them into comic book characters, but that's not who or what they were originally. These were real. Samson, it could be argued, was a sort of a comic booky hero. People put a lot of stock into it and they believe it because of the Abrahamic faith. The prevailing theme is that it's all correct.
Right.
So what is the difference between Samson and Hercules? Not much, other than, some different stories. They were strong men that did all these amazing feats. And my brother just said Fenrir is cool. Cool for who? Fenrir is cool. Is a cool, like the dire wolf, like this kind of pendant. This isn't Fenrir. This is a dire wolf, but it's cool to a degree. But you got to remember, the dude is evil, and he actually does eat the sun and the moon or whatever. I mean, and then Surtur is basically a representation of Saturn, which is the devil, and of course Saturn is where the black cube at the top of Saturn is supposedly the holding cell of Lucifer. And you have all these weird myths and legends and stuff. And I say this, somebody was arguing with me the other day in one of these groups, which is, who cares? I don't even go in them half the time anymore because they're so stupid. They're always fighting. And they were trying to drag me into this argument, and they were trying to say that all of these these beings from the North mythology, they all had a counter, for these different, like in the Persian, it was Rostam. Rostam, if you ever look at Rostam.
Yeah, it's like Hercules.
He was Hercules. Samson, Hercules, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you had all these different beings that were Hercules, and you had all these different beings that was Thor. Like Enlil, he was the god of thunder, lightning, whatever. And then you had Texcatlipoca,
Mm-hmm.
He caused hurricanes and storms and stuff, and he was like Thor. But then, and I said, no, I said they're all different. They can all be these. There could be more than one of these thunder gods, but it was a regional thing. Because if you look at Yahweh, when he led the children of Israel out of Egypt, there was a council of 12 that was underneath this being known as Lil or Enlil, whatever. And I forgot his exact name, but he was the main god of that pantheon, and they all had land. And so for Yahweh to have land, he had to have a people for the land. So then he went to the land of the Ammonites and the Malachites and all these others, and had the children of Israel wipe them out and took that land, and it became the land of Yahweh. So you have all these weird narratives that are all going on, but we've all just kind of agreed that this narrative is what's real. And there really is no reason why, other than, we believe in Christ, and he came from that particular group of people, but he could have come from just any group of people. But you can't connect what came before to what is and to what will be just because, of that. Because you had multiple gods or beings that were setting themselves up as gods because they were all doing it,
Yeah.
And what this has to do with what we're talking about is that, these beings, a lot of them came from the inner earth. And I think that they came from past civilizations. But where did they come from originally? Probably from other planets. And I'm not saying that they had to come here in spaceships, because they don't. They can fold space and time and walk through, like I would walk through this door and leave the studio. It's like for them, going from one realm to the next is just walking through a doorway, and they're in another time, space, dimension, whatever. And so it's stargates and the travel of stargates. And so you have these beings doing what they did, and there has to be some kind of order that was established. So, everybody started, and there was a push at that time too, to move everything from being polytheistic to monotheistic.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking the other night about how Jesus is God, or if he's not God, they made him God by changing some of the narratives and leaving out certain things, like when Jesus tells people, don't worship me, but worship the Father. Well, if you just omit that little bit, then Jesus becomes God, and because he allows for the worship of himself. Right? So they say, well, Jesus didn't tell them not to worship him, so he must be God. Yeah, but all that takes is an omission of one sentence. And they did it multiple times and then turned it into, aha, voila, this is what happened. And now Jesus is God. Now Jesus is God, and we can use Jesus and those that follow Jesus, to have control. just like we did with the being that we created in the Bible as God. Doesn't mean that they created God. There was already a God there. God was always there, always in place. It was the people who wrote about God and what they said about God. And it gets really convoluted. And I would hazard to guess that we have a very rich, long history that's just waiting to be discovered about who and what these beings really are, you know, and I'm sure it's there somewhere, but it's been hidden from us. And I think just like a lot of the language has been used to twist and turn and hide the truth biblically, hide the truth about all these beings, you know. And like I pointed out earlier of the show, just getting a book about what really went on back in the 1870s with the Earps and the Clantons, what really happened. You're not even going to be able to find a really completely accurate source other than newspaper clippings. And some of the newspaper clippings were very anti-Earp because he was, Clanton was very good at spinning the narrative and making himself look like the good guy. So he was running around talking to the press, and in the early part of that whole thing, he made himself look like he was this innocent victim. He was this good guy, and his family was being attacked. His brother was killed by the merciless Earps, and he was this poor guy. And then later on, as the war went on, then people started to see, hey, wait a minute, this guy's a piece of crap. You know, maybe this isn't correct.
Well, it went to the point to where Wyatt and Doc actually got arrested for murder and were thrown in jail.
Yeah, they did. They went on trial, and Clanton went to all the witnesses.
Yeah. If it hadn't been for that one witness that he had that
was dying,
gotten to,
because the guy was dying of consumption.
Yeah.
And he came forward and said, and so that held a lot of sway back then, because people had this belief that in this altruism that most people really were good at their core.
Yeah.
So this guy's going to die. So why would he lie about something? Yeah. And so what ended up happening, they brought him to court and he says, look, I'm dying.
Yeah.
I'm not long for this world. And I don't care what Clanton and his friends do. They can kill me if they want. But he goes, I was there. And he pointed the other people out in the courtroom and he said, y'all were all there. He's like, y'all have life to live. I get it. And you've been intimidated and you're scared.
Yep.
But he was like, I don't care if I walk out of this courtroom and they shoot me dead in the back, you know. And that was very profound. The judge kind of was like, wow, here's a guy who's going to die and he's telling the truth. Because not only did he say it very, you know, succinctly, whatever, but, you know, he had nothing to lose by telling the truth, only to gain, because, you know, most people believed in the afterlife, and if you died, you know, out of sin, then you were going to go to hell. And so here's a man who wasn't going to do that. So that tipped the scales, but they were this close to getting hung.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, because, of course, I mean, you know,
Bean got up there and lied his ass off.
He did. And he was a liar. Yeah, Bean was a liar, and they all lied because Bean was angry about Wyatt's relationship with his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all it was. That's all it was.
Yeah. What was her name? Josephine Marcus.
Yeah.
And so Josephine Marcus. So when you read all of this, and there's these books that are no longer available to us, so we just have this narrative now. And you got to understand something, folks. Some of these books that were written about this, they're no longer available in print and probably never will be. In fact, I know they won't. And they were written 10, 20, 30, 40 years after all of this.
Right.
You know, and Wyatt anyway, lived to be into like 1920. He was in his 90s, you know, when he died. And, you know, there were actually 4 brothers that were there, not 3. There was another Earp brother that was there, and then he had left, you know. And then at one point, Masterson had come. There were these different people that were friends of his that would come and go, and they were all having clashes with these dickheads, because they were like, "Who are these people? They're just running this town.
Yeah. The best
And
the best documentary that I've seen is the one that's out on Netflix
Netflix,
right now. Yeah, it's
Wyatt
called
Earp and the Cowboy War.
yes.
And I encourage all my listeners to go and watch that, and it'll give you a little idea of what I've been going through
Yep.
with and the reason why we call that guy Ike has nothing to do. It has everything to do with just go watch Ike Clanton on that video, okay? And then go see what I'm talking about. And that's all. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. But that will show you. But even that doesn't do the whole thing justice. I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff that went on, and then
Yeah.
they got arrested again because Wyatt there was this armed posse of the cowboy gang that got deputized by Ben,
Yeah.
and then Wyatt and his guys got deputized, so they were just running around killing each other. But Ike was very good at twisting and turning and telling lies and making it look like he was this innocent victim, and he preyed upon the same people he preyed upon and stole money from. They were supporting him
Yeah.
because he made it look like it was the Southerners, the South will rise again,
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, his own dad wasn't even in the Civil War. Like, there's a lot of proof now that his dad wasn't even, he was too old. So nobody in his family was even in the Civil War. And here's this guy acting like he's some kind of Southern revenge. He's Jonah Hex. And you're like, and
Yeah.
it was only Virgil that had served in the Union. So, Doc was from the South. He was a Georgian guy that had lived in Dallas for a long time.
Had
So
an
then when you
office
start,
in Denison, Texas.
he was a dentist. Yeah. And that's how he ended up with consumption, which is tuberculosis. And so I've researched this pretty heavily. And when you look at this whole, it was Ike Clanton was a bastard who just lied his ass off about everything. And
He
he
was good,
twisted
though.
and turned. And he was very good at playing it up for the media. He would just sit out there and tell people all of this crap, and so these people were buying into it, and he made it into, oh, we're the have-nots, we lost the war, and
Yeah.
these are a bunch of Yankees that have come down and they're taking everything. And the truth was that really none of them were. It was just Virgil that fought for the Union because of where they happened to be from, because Wyatt was too young to have fought in the war.
Yep.
And Morgan was definitely too young. So, then none of these people were even, but Clanton played on that. Ike was able to play on that, and he just lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. And that's what ended up happening. But do you see, though, the correlation, how something that could happen just in the 1870s, and then the books and all the information that was written about it, a lot of it had been lost.
Yep.
Just in 100 years, we had already lost it all. Imagine all of the information that's been lost over 500 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years. And you're sitting there going like, by the time it's been several thousand years, how much of this do you think is preserved? All we got are stories that have been turned into stories. And every time they rewrote these books, they changed some things to make it fit more and more and more into a narrative. So that's my point, is like, how do you break that down and start off with something that's already flawed from the beginning, because you don't have all of the information? And then people are like, well, that's been debunked. And first thing I'm going to tell you is, by who?
Yeah.
By who? Like, who? Oh, well, and then they'll pick the scholar from whatever group that they're in and they're involved in. And I can say, okay, well, me and my guys looked over it, and we decided that it wasn't a forgery. And then how far back can you actually go to prove that it is or it isn't a forgery? You can't. Look at the Shroud of Turin. Do you know how many times they have told us it's a forgery? And how many times they've turned around and said, no, this probably is correct. Oh, wait, no, this is a forgery. So you want to start an argument, just get a group of theologians together and say, hey, we're going to have a big pizza party, and then start talking about the Shroud of Turin. you could start a fight with 24 people that will throw punches because nobody wants to be wrong. But at some point, there has to be an accountability. Now, the thing with Bigfoot right now in this community, I've seen people nearly come to blows, over this stuff. Just at dinner, people start arguing, and you're like, "Oh, I don't know if this is going to go well," because there's certain people, at certain conferences, you ain't going to sit them together because they're not going to agree. It doesn't matter. I'll even say this. I'm not going to say who it was, but there were two people at my first conference who both of them, I considered them to be friends, and we made a mistake of sitting them too close together. And it didn't pop off, but it could have. People were saying that this person said this person said that. And I had to go and ask those people, hey, is everything okay? Is this, because they have two different beliefs. And a lot of times there's nothing you can do to bridge that. You can try, but that's a pipe dream. Yeah. And so you have these factions, these camps that grow up from this stuff saying, hey, I believe like this. And it becomes kind of like a left-right paradigm where if you're in this camp, you have to believe basically everything that camp is espousing, or you're going to make enemies within that camp. Same thing with the other guys. They have to do the same thing. I say poppycock to that because I believe some of what the physical people say, but I believe more of what the spiritual side of it is, but not all of it. I don't buy into everything. Like, I don't believe that every time somebody goes missing in the national parks, that it's the work of Bigfoot or some sleestack from Land of the Lost. I just don't. No. And I've said that before, and I think there are people who in this community who are profiteers, and they've been profiting from it for a long time. And then everybody gets to know them, and they like their work, they like their books, and then they'll do this about face, whenever that person does it. And that shouldn't be the way it is. You should look at the evidence. You know what I mean?
What little there is.
what little there is. Yeah. Well, and sorry for bogarting the conversation. Text. I'm sorry.
You're good, man. The thing about, you start talking about the Bigfoot in the community, it's cultic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people out here that look at it like a religion, and they get bent, man, when you don't agree with their narrative. That's the ones that I shy away from, because they're so nearsighted on what the possibilities are. You want to start a fiery conversation, bring up orbs. I mean, good God.
There you go. I was wondering what you were going to say, and there you go.
Because that's, for some reason, that has become the big topic now. And if you look at this subject over the years, Josh, do you remember back when everybody was talking about Bigfoot seeing IR, and it was like this big, that was looked on as woo and some superpower that these critters had. And it's a perfectly normal ability, but
it's not like it's unheard of.
No, there's other primates that can see. Lemurs can see IR. But these people, for some reason, I think, get carried away because they want Bigfoot to be so special. I think sometimes I think they want it to have these special powers and everything. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. but you can't say for sure that it does or doesn't. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and why people are won't approach it with an open mind one way or the other. I don't understand. I don't know if it's something that maybe it helps them get their minds wrapped around this subject and what they experienced or what they saw. Maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just that innocent, you know. But they approach it with such fervor that you can't have a conversation with them. And if you disagree with them, they take it like you're attacking them.
That's the big thing too. When you disagree with someone, it always breaks down into, well, this person's a poopacaca head, you know.
Yeah, which is funny because they have, you know, these people that are like this, they have no bones about coming after you and people that you're just acquainted with, you know, that like listen to your show. They'll come after them because you don't agree with their narrative.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
A narrative
What?
that you didn't create. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
you just chose. And you know, when you first get into this, and you and I have talked about this before
Yeah.
too. It's like they ask you what team you're on.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Yeah.
like, what team are you on? And I didn't
Mine.
have a team. I was like, well, I don't have a team.
Yeah.
I'm not choosing sides here. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to say hello to Bear County Bigfoot. He's a good friend of ours, Rod Nichols, great guy.
Oh man, he's great.
One of the nicest guys in the field and does good
Yeah.
work. Rod, we
Yes.
need to get you back on the show soon. Let me know. We got. I think we got a slot open this coming month. You need to let me know so you can come on and talk about your research. Really good guy.
Hopefully
Wendy Eater.
we'll see him next weekend.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, we'll see him. I hope to see him and maybe Edward Monge would be there. I don't know if he's going to be there, but I don't think Lyle's going to be. I think he's got something going on, but it'd be nice to see everybody. Last year, Lyle was there.
Yeah.
And Ken wasn't, but I think this year Ken's going to be there. But you know, you got these
they're never
people.
seen in the same place at the same time. You know.
Well, I
They're
can
the
tell you
same
this: I've
person.
seen them together quite a bit. So, you know, I've been in the same place, in the same restaurants, and whatever with them more times than I can count. So, Wendy Eater here says, Wolf and Tex, what do you think about Melba Ketchum's DNA analysis of Bigfoot? I've talked to Melba a few times, and I consider her to be a friend. But I don't. That's a hard one. I mean, I'll say what I know if you say what you know. That's a hard
Well,
question.
I'm going to put it this way because I've never had the privilege of speaking with her, and I really, really want to because I'm on her side. Okay. Number one thing I'm going to say, they done her dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Flat out. You won't ever convince me of anything else that she was done dirty. She was a scapegoat and they threw her under the bus and backed up over it. But unfortunately, you have to decide if you're going to trust her or the people that talk about her
Mm-hmm.
when you make your decision about her research.
That too, though, is a hard thing because, how do I put this? And I don't shy away from controversy. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to touch that" because they're worried about what happens, the repercussions. Me, I
Yep.
roll the dice and I don't care. I just say what I got to say. When Melba and I talked about doing a show, when we had been talking about working together and doing something, there were several parameters that were put on that she didn't want to talk about.
Right.
And that kind of kills the whole flavor. You can't really, say we're going to make a stew that's going to be very bland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing personal against her. And if she, and I'm sure somebody's going to run and tell her and try to say I said something negative about her. I'm not saying anything negative about her because she's never done anything to me. That was my only issue, was like, why not tell what you know? If you know what you know, these people are never going to stop messing with you or attacking you. We've already
Yeah.
seen that. When people do it, they do it. But so why not just let it roll? Why not roll the dice and just do and say what you got to say? I was told many times that the things that I say, starting way back, okay, they said, you're not going to make it if you're doing an hour-long show. There's very few that are doing that, that are able to do that and captivate and do this. You need to do, talk less about this and that. And then I was told, well, you're not going to make it on that time slot. Well, you're not going to make it you're not going to make it. You're not going to. I heard so many of that, so many naysayers, people give me advice. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. Don't talk about Bigfoot being the woo. Don't talk about Dogman in any form other than it's a physical flesh and blood. I was told, how many times did they tell us, Anthony, not to use the word werewolf?
Over and over.
Over and over. And many people said that I would never reach 20,000 subscribers. They said you're not gonna hit 20,000. You're not gonna hit 40,000. And well, that day has come, and they're wrong.
Yeah,
they were wrong, and that's all there is to it.
And the werewolf confessions were like one of the most popular episodes too. So
if we would have dropped it in a podcast form, it would have gotten even more.
We couldn't have called that the Dogman confessions.
Well, who the hell does that?
I mean, because that's just stupid.
It makes sense. Because that's not what these things were either.
Yeah.
But you had these people who were telling us, do this, do that, and then it turns out that some of them were just, doing subterfuge. They were sabotaging, trying to knock us down. And so, and I've told you this text too. Like when we got into this field, when I got in this field, the PRT people, there were so many people rooting for us to fail or for us to not grow. And a lot of those people offered help and pretended to be our friends. And the minute that they could, they stuck a knife in our back. And then they were just like bringing everybody together in these conferences was a big blow to a lot of these people's ego, because compartmentalization is their life's blood.
Right.
Compartmentalization, talking about it, because you, like me, started off with this flesh and blood outlook. I thought for some reason, I don't know, that all of the ghost or spiritual experiences I had were completely different. They were wholly different from that Dogman encounter. And now I know it's all part of the same pie. It's not the same kind of pie, but it's still the same pie. And I'm with you on that when you said, hey, it's not all the same, but it's related.
Yeah.
Somewhere
down the line. Mm-hmm. And see, that's just it. We don't know how it's all tied together.
No, we don't.
But it seems to be connected at some point. But we just can't figure out where the knot starts. It's like pulling a backlash out of a bass rod. But there's so many people, and you know me, I don't get into the whole drama thing, but it's so many people out there that if somebody's successful and they don't have what these people have, if I can't have it, they're not going to have it either. They'll do anything they can to tear you down. I went through the same thing. I had the threats and everything like that. You know that. I've had conversations with you about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a mind over matter approach to it. I don't mind because they don't matter.
Yeah. And then there was the one thing you had told me too, like whenever you had started working with me, we're not going to mention names. You had some people telling you don't do it.
Uh-huh.
And they made some kind of overt threat, and the same thing happened to me, because they had a vested interest in keeping people like us apart.
Yep.
Because whether out of jealousy or these other ones that didn't want us to come to certain conclusions. And I say this and I stand by this. Some of these people are getting paid. I promise you, they're getting paid to do this, to run interference. And I think there's quite a few of them. And the higher up they get in prominence, the more that it becomes about the money. I really do. And then, one of the things I still say this, I don't care what anyone says. I know this is true. When I got into this field, they couldn't buy me off. That was a big problem. They wanted to buy the show a few times. And I thought in the early days, you remember the first time we were offered anything, Anthony, we were both kind of shocked. Like, what did they see in the show that we must have not really seen? We knew we would make it and that things would turn out. But I mean, I think that they saw the potential there and thought, well, if we kill it from the inception, from its
nip it in the bud.
Yeah, stop it from becoming what it could be. Because people were saying things like they liked, my delivery and my memorization skills are pretty good, and and I have some pretty good speaking, and so I think that they saw something there and they thought, well, we need to buy this guy off and get rid of him, and every one of these contracts seems very similar. It's like, well, you can't do a show for 5 years. So you're going to be an employee of ours, and then we're going to fire you is what they're going to do.
Right.
And then you can't do nothing for 5 years, and then you just got your money, but you can't do anything because everything else is a non-compete clause. And that's the truth. I could show you the paperwork. I mean, it's like paperwork, but the emails and the offers. Right. But it was supposedly different factions. But there has to be someone further back that's asking them to do this. And I really think that that's, where a lot of this stems from, all of this crap, because you say things that they don't like, because you have people who just out of the blue come out and start attacking you that you don't know. You've never met these people. You've never talked to these people, never had any inkling that they existed. And then all of a sudden they're over here just making the most wildest claims you've ever heard. And you're going like, what in the hell? Some of these people too, they'll say things like they know me in my personal life. And I'm like, yeah, because no, you don't. I've never met these people, never met these people in my life. And they lie. There's one guy, it was an Oklahoma research guy. And he was on a team or whatever, and then he was in some Washington team, which is that's a long ways from Oklahoma to Washington. And he swears up and down on one of these stupid platforms that is where all the stupid people go to say lies. And he's over there saying that he worked with me and that we were out in the field and that, that we were on some team together. And I'm like, this guy is just absolutely lying. And people were asking me who he was. And I'm like, I don't know this guy. But he was just lying, making up an entire scenario where we, in this weird world that he was creating, was like we knew each other and he knew me for years. And I'm like, no, you don't. Because I looked up that whole team and I didn't know not one person on that team or connected to that team.
What I don't understand is if you can't do what we're doing, because I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people that will not do what I do in the field. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
But they want to talk about how to do things the proper way when they won't do half the legwork to get it done.
No.
Or take the chances, or however you want to look at it. But they'll certainly talk trash about you.
Yeah, they'll run you down. Yeah. I've heard things about you, going out in the field and what we're talking about. And I'm just like, before I even knew who you were, people, and I think it was like this sort of game that they were playing to keep certain individuals from working together. So they thought, well, if we tell this person that this is a pupukaka head, maybe he'll be dumb enough to go, okay, well, I better stay away from that person. And no matter how many times I've been told not to talk to someone, not to interview someone, I'm gonna find out for myself.
Right.
If that person is as bad as everybody says, whatever. And sometimes you do. You're like, okay, now I get it. And you're right. But then a lot of times you're just like, no, that's just one Yahoo's opinion of this person because that person didn't do or say what they wanted them to do or say. Or it's just jealousy and they want to keep everybody separated because that's the way, to get ahead is there's two ways to do it. There's one is to sabotage all of your competitors and then you're the only turd that's left floating.
Yeah.
And then the other way is to just work really hard, either going out in the field, working really hard, or researching and doing your homework and really busting your ass is what we do. It's what I do.
Yep.
And now the one knock on us is that we don't go out in the field all the time. For one thing, I run businesses, and then the other thing too, you need a certain level of equipment and things like that. Then we've put all of our eggs into to doing things in the studio, but now we're going to be doing that too. And we've started doing it and we've started going to different places and it just makes sense. And just for the record, Anthony, your breathing is really hard and people think it's me.
Well, like right now we're on the
video. You were like, you do that a lot. And like when you're getting close to me in the videos, everybody's like, he's breathing hard. And so this dude's got like, I don't know, he breathes hard. So I'm just telling you, that's not me. I don't know. I just want that to be said right now. So, but just what I was saying, like just move the mic a little bit because you were breathing really hard. And you've always done that. I don't know what that is, but you asthmatic as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. Yeah. And so whenever, the narrative comes down and it always tumbles eventually, and like here's another one, our friend Rod, he says, I honestly can't buy into that it's an undiscovered primate with so many encounters saying otherwise. I mean, there you go. I mean, I had Rod on the show and Rod talked about, a bunch of different stuff.
Right.
And he was an aper. And then eventually you just kind of go, okay, there's something wrong with this narrative. But then people say, oh, well, they got to you. Who is they? How about my research got to me and I figured out, hey, this is not correct. Because you have 1,000 people that are giving you encounters telling you that this isn't what's happening. This thing, they're shooting it and it's not dying. It's,
I don't know if I've gotten to talk to you about this particular encounter that we had. Me and Brandy and a friend of hers, Holly, and Nick S. in Shaughnessy. That we were up in Brown Springs Cemetery, and we all four saw this thing. And getting back on the orb thing, I don't know what these things are, but we didn't see this thing with the naked eye. The only way we could see it was on thermal. Have I talked to you about that yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we're up in the cemetery. It was a pretty wild night. Brandy had her first Bigfoot sighting with right beside me, and we saw it at the same time. It was great. But there was 4 of us up there. Nick had a thermal. And he's looking around and goes, what is that? We start passing the thermal back and forth between the 4 of us. And there's this heat signature on the thermal that's, I don't know, big as a cantaloupe, bowling ball, that type of, that size of thing. Floating about 12 to 16 inches off the ground. And undulating much like a bubble in a lava lamp. And it was a very, very solid, hot signature. It was solid black. And this thing's moving around, and we're thinking, what in the world is this? And we're looking, we can't see it with our naked eye.
Yeah.
This thing's a dozen feet from us, maybe 20, maybe. And we're like, what is this thing? So we're passing the thermal back and forth between the four of us, and we're all looking at the same thing. And this thing's moving around, and I'm like, well, let's see what happens when I walk towards it. So I walk towards this thing, and it moves away. And it keeps a certain distance, right? So when I start moving back, it keeps the same distance away from me, but moves back with me. Right? And then we kept watching it, and it just slowly cooled off and cooled off and cooled off and cooled off and just disappeared. Never seen anything like that before or since. But it made me wonder, all these orbs that people talk about that they're seeing, how many are they not seeing? How much of that phenomenon is around us every freaking day?
And what do you think it has to do with the Bigfoot phenomenon? Do you feel like that there is something there that's like...
Well, the problem is, one of the problems was we were in a cemetery. Okay. So there's no telling what this thing was, right? It could have been... I don't think Bigfoot turned into orbs and that type of thing. I can't go there. Okay. But there is a type of energy that is all around in the forest that manifests itself into some kind of light or energy. On the heels of that, this last trip that I made out to Brown Springs, I encountered for the first time what people, I guess you can call them orbs, you can call them ghost lights, whatever you want to call them. Okay. But they weren't floating around the forest and that type of thing. They weren't different colors or anything like that. They were flashing, just like whoosh, 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 whoosh. We saw about 24 of them. But we think we may have debunked that as a natural phenomenon. And for all the researchers out there, I want you to take notes of this if this happens to you. Okay. Because what we figured out, or what we believe, what we think, what we theorize, however you want to term it, is the humidity was 12 to 13%, which is very low. And you know as well as I do, once you hit that low, everything becomes a tinderbox, right? It was in the middle. It was right after that dust storm hit last weekend. Okay. And so you had these huge particles of silica in the air. We think it was static electricity. Because much like if you go rub your feet on the carpet and you shock somebody in the dark, you'll see the spark. Mm-hmm. We think that's what was happening. Now, I'm not saying that's all of what this is, but we need to be... I'm using this as a lesson to look at what to watch for, what kind of data to take. Be sure you note if there's a lot of dust in the air, if it's low humidity, that type of thing, because we need to rule out all this stuff and figure out what we're left with before we start worrying about what these floating orbs are. We have to determine what we're looking at, what's natural phenomena, what's not. Now, getting back to the one that had a heat signature, I don't know. That thing moved with intelligence. So it's completely different from what I just, encountered. So there's different phenomena that we're seeing out there. There's different phenomena that we're dealing with. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. When you see and you run into this phenomenon that act and look, maybe have some similarities in behavior and the way it looks, you automatically throw it in. Oh well, they're those are orbs, those are ghosts, those are whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than one thing going on out there, folks. There's natural phenomenon happening, and there's supernatural phenomenon happening.
And there's a lot of different types of supernatural phenomena too.
Exactly.
Like
So,
Ron Moorhead said, they're found around power plants.
Yep. And that could be as simple as the same reason ants are drawn to an outside breaker box or an AC unit. It's the EMP field or EMF field. It's that energy that draws them to it. It could be as simple as that. We've picked up, we take a spectrometer out with us. We picked up ultrasound and infrasound in the middle of freaking nowhere at the same time. We think that a lot of this stuff could be Earth noise. Because the planet's moving all the time under your feet. All the time. And it's going to generate sounds or frequencies that we cannot hear. But they will affect you physically. The brown sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had it happen to me in the field. Bigfoot were in the area. We heard and we heard one. Which we heard what I believe was probably Bigfoot. We saw sign which I believe was made by Bigfoot. They were. It was the same trip. Within a couple of hours that we witnessed a cedar tree that had all the limbs stripped off of one side up to about 15 feet, and they were piled up at the bottom, and something had been bedding on these things. Cedar's a natural bug repellent, folks. Right after that, I spotted a game trail, and we were fixing to go down this game trail. I took 2 steps, and then we were in single file, and there were 4 of us. I took 2 steps towards that game trail, and I go right in front of me, out of the darkness. And we felt it. I mean, it hit us hard enough to feel it. I mean, it was loud and deep. And the guy in the back said, "It's time to go." So we backed out. But before that happened, we were all walking single file. I had point. And I felt great, not a problem. And then all of a sudden, I get weak. I break out in a cold sweat. I felt like I was fixing to pass out. All the color drained off my face. I was having to lean on a tree. And about 5 to 7 minutes later, I felt better than I did before. What was that? You want to talk to? Well, I thought at first it may be dehydration. Maybe I hadn't drank enough water, right? But the only way that's going to get better if I intake water. Well, my water was down in the truck, so I didn't drink any water, but it was gone just in about 5 minutes later. So, what are these phenomena? What is this stuff happening to us out there? We got to separate what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
If we can. I had a conversation with Thomas from Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, Thomas Winterton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was at the last San Antonio conference. And I waited till the conference was over. And
he was there last year.
Yeah. We were all wrapping stuff up. And I'd never met the guy. I had never spoken to the guy. I'd never watched his show. Okay. And I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, man," I said, I'm Tex, so-and-so. I do research in Oklahoma. I said, "I'm going to be flat out honest with you, brother. I've never even watched an episode of your show. I don't want an autograph. I don't want to talk to you about research." So I sat down. We had about a 20, 30-minute conversation. And my main question was, because I told him I'm running into some of the same issues in my research area that y'all are running into up on Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And I said, have y'all figured out a way to differentiate what's physical and what's not? And after about a 10-minute rant, the short answer was no.
Yeah.
So we're not alone out there. And one thing I can say about, and I still haven't watched an episode of that show. I need to.
Yeah, me neither. I've seen like part of a couple different ones.
Yeah. I hear about it. Other people tell me about it. But I'm of two minds of that, because one, I don't want it to put their research and stuff to plant seeds on what I might think when I run into something. I like to do my stuff cold, so to speak. On the other hand, maybe it might help my research, but if they're not coming up with any answers, the only thing I can do is not make the same mistakes. But I don't know if they're making mistakes.
Yeah.
Just because we aren't getting results doesn't mean we're making mistakes or doing it wrong.
Yep.
There may be data to get there that we just don't know how to record yet. That's the big problem, I think. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and we got somebody here that says, Tara says, Josh, question, have the strange stories increased since last year? Yeah, I could say this. It goes up every year. I mean, and that could be just because the show is growing and it's getting bigger. And we have the podcast, not just the
Right.
YouTube channel, and so I'd say we're probably getting more stories now than we did a year ago. Right? Or would
I
it be?
am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just keeps going up.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, you're getting bigger. The show's getting bigger. More people are reaching out to you. So, hey. And I get that question all the time. Do you think the veil's thinning? Do you think more things are happening?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it is, but I don't think that's much like the missing phenomena. I don't think that's the one answer for it. The world has gotten smaller in several ways. Technology-wise, we've made the world smaller. Mm-hmm. Also, we've made it. It's not as the stigma on coming out of the proverbial closet is not like it was when we first got into this, right? We offer platforms, safe platforms for people to tell their story. Mm-hmm. And the more people that come out, the more people that are going to follow suit. We're making the world smaller. We're making the environment that these things are in smaller. We're encroaching on them. So we're going to have more. We're going to have more encounters. We're going to have more reports. So I think it's all of that. As we grow, as on our platforms, we're going to reach more people. That and then you throw in all the other stuff that I talked about. I think it's it's all of that. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's one single answer to that question, but I do think it is thinning. Yeah.
Here's a weird thing. There were some people who had sent us what I want to say grainy. Well, I mean, it's a trail cam. I mean, so it's going to be kind of grainy footage of a Bigfoot. But the guy's brother or the guy's cousin and his brother had been, well, it was his cousin's drone, but his brother was with him. And it's a 200-acre spot. And they had just gone from corner to corner with this drone. And so it gave him the idea, let's look let's get 2 more drones and let's go and put them all up at the same time. And they saw nothing. They were walking across the property. They saw nothing. But then later, the next day, they were reviewing. The oldest brother was reviewing the footage, and right below where one of those drones was this wolf-headed. I saw the picture. I mean, and Anthony, I'll show it to you. Well, I'll show it to you. I don't want to show it. The person is probably going to come on the show, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
Give it away to, but I'm going to show you, Anthony, and you tell me. This guy has this image, and it's just, I haven't shown anybody yet, and so it's just like everybody starts saying, well, that's not real. This isn't real. This isn't real, whatever, and giving the person a hard time. Let me see if I have it. Oh, no, that's one of the photos. Dang it. Okay. So I don't think I have that. It was in a group. You know what? It might be in one of our groups too. But the person has this footage of this Dogman looking creature, and it looks like he's crawling down a tree, kind of like, and his head is tilted up, and it's like right there across from the trail cam. But what's interesting is that drone is right there, and the drone has this heat signature ability. One of them was a really expensive, powerful drone.
Yeah.
It's giving off no heat signature at all. How is that possible? Another one had the infrared, So you had this, they had the infrared, they had the night vision, and they caught nothing. But the trail cam clearly shows a grainy image of I guess it would be a dog, man. The body looks kind of weird, kind of crawlerish. When you look at the body, I'll show you when we get to the house. I've got it on the computer, but it's and I just wish somebody else was here that I could show. I don't want to, like I said, the guy's gonna come on the show and let him do it, but I just want to. And I don't want to. Pictures. People start arguing, and that's what happened in this group. And it was just like, I don't want to be this with this crap. But the head looked like it's kind of tilted upward. It's kind of like, okay, when somebody's doing like yoga and there's a downward facing dog.
Oh yeah.
No pun intended, Tex, but it was like downward facing dog with the head up like this. And there's this skinny, not pale, it was like gray, but it was really, I mean, if it was some kind of wolf-like physical creature, it was very emaciated.
Yeah.
But you could see it was a head. And the reason they were just out there playing with drones or just looking because there had been a Bigfoot sighting in that area. 2, in fact. Not 2 Bigfoot sightings, but 2 Bigfoot were spotted.
Right.
And so they wanted to, in South Texas, the reason there's so much down there is because there's so much privatized land. It's just these giant ranches.
Yeah.
And it starts in South Central Texas, which is where like the Hernandez Ranch, Spicewood, all that. And it goes down from there all the way down. It's just a lot of empty land. People that just own land. It's just a ton of it. Like King Ranch was divided up, and at one time, and it took like a quarter of the entire state of Texas, which is just massive.
Yeah, that's huge.
It was partitioned off. Yeah, it was sold and it was partitioned off. And so there's this photo I got. And I get these like if not every day, every other day. And Anthony, you know that. We get all these pictures and we don't know what to do with them because if you post them, they start arguing and it becomes a thing. Yeah. But you can see this creature like with its head tilted up. And then riddle me this, like how in the hell how does this thing be a living, breathing thing with no heat signature? And the infrared didn't, it doesn't catch it. The night vision doesn't catch it. But the trail cam caught it at an angle. How is that possible?
I don't know. The physical nature of it's weird.
And Anthony, you had said something when we were on one investigation. Well, we weren't on an investigation, but we were talking to some people, and it was on location. But we were interviewing these people, and they were saying that these things don't have they're like, and they don't have any, like, they're not. It doesn't bother them to be out. You don't see them shivering from the cold.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Anthony was like, these things are impervious.
You know, the elements don't really matter because they're not like completely physical creatures anyway. So
Yeah.
the metaphysical thing.
So it speaks to their metaphysical nature. And you're sitting here
Right.
going, what in the hell are we dealing with here? I mean, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these people that will start arguing. And you know as well as I do, Tech, some of them groups are just a viper's pit of just,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
they set people up so you'll go in there and start fighting. That coalition of the thinking of stupid, whatever that is. Don't fall in that pit, because that's all they do. They just set a trap. People go and they start attacking you. And so that's a stupid group. And then you have these. There's several of them that are they have these really stupid whatever. And there's a bunch of them. And they just. I had to leave one recently, and unfortunately, the admins and mods were actually pretty cool, but there was just always a fight, and the people in there were tagging me, trying to get me to draw me into to pick a side. And I said, I don't want to be involved in this. I have enough going on without being in another war. I don't, and so then you have these factions that arise, and these were not flesh and blood versus the spiritual. You have flesh and blood versus flesh and blood too, and you have spiritual versus spiritual. And these people were arguing. Now, here's a guy right here, Dick Richards. He was on here saying they're the Ophanin, and so then you had all these people that were arguing, saying, no, this is a natural occurring phenomena because of the energy. These orbs come up. They're not living beings. They're just there because of the ley lines, or I can't remember how the lady said it. They're here because of the energy. And then the other guy was arguing the opposite. He was kind of like what Dick Richards was saying. He says, no, these things travel through these orbs, and these orbs are alive. And then next thing you know, I was like sitting there, and I had made a comment on another deal. And I said, oh, shoot. They didn't saw me, And they're like, well, what do you think, Josh Turner? Get on there. You start arguing with them. And I was just like, I really don't. And before I could even finish, they're like, well, Josh agrees with me. I didn't even say anything. I had agreed with someone else's comment that really was kind of innocuous. And I was like, no, I'm not really. But if you say no, then that's it. The door's closed. And then later on, if you ever change your mind, well, just 2 months ago, he said this wasn't real. And now he says it is. He's a liar, So there you go. You're a liar. You're pronounced a liar because you don't adhere to whatever they had put out there, whatever crap.
Well, and God forbid you have a change of opinion. You evolve your thinking. Your research turns you in a different direction.
That's right. But God forbid you should also use the word evolve your opinion too, because then you're not being a good God-fearing person. You talked about evolution. But you evolve. And that's the thing. As people, we should always be evolving and growing and changing according to. Everybody wants to find data to fit this is what it boils down to. They want to find data to fit their narrative.
Yep.
Instead of the narrative following the data. And it's the worst with the Aper community, I believe, when they're always looking for the data. But they only want that data when it fits the narrative. And when it goes off of the reservation into some other weird stuff, they're like, well, no, I don't know. I'm going to ignore all of that. And that's not the correct data that I'm looking for. Because the data you're looking for is to just support your opinion. That's what people would do with religion too.
So I was just sitting here thinking the same thing.
They don't formulate their. Now I know some who do. I know some people who find a religion and they are absolutely, their life becomes about that religion. And
I love what
more power to them, but that's not the kind of person I am either. But I'm neither one. But some people, though, they're the way they are, and instead of trying to change to be better, they find every other thing they can in the world to support their for lack of a better term, their shitty behavior. You know, and that's not correct, man. You cannot do that. And that has been a problem in this field for a long time. And then there's this, you know, well, I can't change my opinion because I'm friends with this group of people, this so-and-so, and they don't believe this way. So if I did, then that's going to create a schism there between us. And it's like, do you care about just being right and being on a team, or do you care about the truth? And that's what you have to weigh the balance with yourself and say, hey, I actually care about being correct and giving people the correct information. And
not only that, if people that you're involved with, that you call a team, are so close-minded that they're going to shut you down and ostracize you because you have a different opinion or the evidence is leading you in a different direction, is that really a group you want to be associated with in the first place? I mean, come on.
Yeah, and in your name, it gets thrown around a lot, and I know mine does. Hell, there's people that have written entire chapters of books claiming that they, one guy in particular who, I don't know, I would sue him if I had more money right now because he's claiming that he interviewed me. And so where he's basically saying like, yes, and in his own words and blah, blah, blah. And I've been to a lot of conferences, but I don't remember talking to this guy. And I don't remember, like, these people say that they know me and they know me personally.
Yeah.
Don't believe it, folks. 90% of that's a lie because I've never talked to these people and I never told them that this is what I believe. I've even had people going around saying that they've been on my show, and I'm like, you might have been watching it on TV or been in the chat, but you've not been on my show, and I've never interviewed you for anything. And so, you know, that's another thing too. And you got to be careful, folks, if you're in this field. I know Rod, he's one of the people that's on here, you know, and Tex can tell you, be careful with these people who go, hey, can I get an interview from you? I did an interview that I had forgotten about, and it was at the UFO conference in San Antonio. And these guys took me to the side. They did a real quick interview, and so I just was like, and you know, Ken and Ann and Nellie were all kind of waiting for me. So I was like, I just did it real quick, kind of like, oh, you know. 2 years later, I see this, you know, Josh Turner says, blah, blah, blah. We interviewed him, and he said, and I'm going like, this is the part that's kind of embarrassing, and I'll say it here. I was like, did I say that?
Yeah.
So that I agree with that, because it's not really the way I feel now, but maybe at the time, you know, a couple years ago, it was about 3 years ago now. Did I agree with that or something? Did I say? And I was thinking, I don't think that sounds like something I would say. And I tried to reach out to this one individual, and they just ignored me. And then I reached out to them on Facebook. They blocked me. So I figured it's either somebody who I was trying to figure out that this was the person, the real person. So it might have been somebody who didn't know who the hell I was from Adams. Who's this guy that they blocked me? But I thought I was on the right person. You know, and I can maybe when we go on Saturday, I can talk to Ryan Edwards, because he was there too, and see if he can remember these people, because there were 3 of them, and there were 2 guys and a girl, and they were in this UFO, you know. And I know that a lot of people that are in the cryptid community, they may not know the UFO community, may not know the ghost community. I know people from all of these communities.
Yeah. Because
I deal with them all the time. And I know these people, they kind of set me up to say these things. And basically, and what it was is them saying that Bigfoot was an extraterrestrial. And I had said, well, I did a show, you know, a celestial Bigfoot, like Bigfoot being, you know, possibly, and these are cases that could be looked at as Bigfoot possibly being have an extraterrestrial origin. To me, it was just an interesting topic to study.
Right.
Doesn't mean that that's what I believe. And that becomes like the problem too when you do a show. It doesn't mean that that's the absolute be all end all. Now you're saying you saw a crawler that tripped you, and this ended up happening at this ranch. that's not the be all end all. That's not saying that you believe that every one of these crawlers is just some phantom that can move in and out of reality and trip you. That's just what happened to you most recently, and you are somewhat of an experiencer, and you're sort of sensitive. I personally think you are sensitive to this thing. You may call it something else, but that's what I would call it, because you have a sensitivity because you've seen the Dogman. You go to these areas with the Bigfoot habitation, obviously Brown Springs. There's people that I've talked to who are terrified of that place.
Yep.
They won't go there. They just said, well, it's kind of like a little Skinwalker Ranchish area, and well, stay the hell away from it. That's one of the people they gave me that advice, and I was like, wow, Tex goes over there pretty regularly.
Yeah, I do.
And you don't have that fear of being there. And be careful, because there's tigers running around out there too.
I know.
There are. Yeah, I mean, there really are. They were released, Tiger King and all those people. They still haven't accounted for all of them.
Well, it was the freaking tribal police and sheriff's deputies that told me that.
Yeah. Well, because that all, and then we watched that documentary, and they said there's all these tigers that are roaming around out there loose. Yeah. We have them here in Texas too, tigers and lions. I had somebody a couple of weeks ago. She reached out to me and says, have you heard of this a lion type creature, whatever? And I'm thinking, manticore. There's different types of these creatures that look kind of like that, But in the end, I told her, I said, I think what you saw was an actual lion. That's what I think you saw. I think you saw an actual female lion. And that's what it was. And she's like, really? And I told her, I said, yeah, I think so, because of where she's living, west in west central Texas, kind of on the gateway up to the west here in Texas. And I said, you're on the cusp there, but there used to be a lot of big cats. There was a big cat sanctuary in that area.
There's a lot. Well, Texas has a lot of big cat sanctuaries in it.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. But yeah, that story where we got stopped by them cops that night, and they ended up telling us about these tigers, and I'm like, holy crap,
it's not what you want to hear. I can tell you that. Yeah.
Well, one of the first encounters that I had up there was I got out of my truck, and it was my first solo mission, I guess you could say, up there, because it all started when I shot my mouth off on a show and said, I'm going to go up there. I need to go up there by myself. Yeah. And I try to, I'm one of these people. I'm like you, Josh. I try to, if I say I'm going to do something, I do my level damn best to do it. I really do. And so I shot my mouth off about this. So I go up there, and I get out of my truck. I'm at the bottom of the cemetery, because the whole thing was I'm going to go to the cemetery by myself, because nobody's and or that I knew of at that point. And all these people were scared to do it and all this kind of stuff. And so I get out of my truck there at the base of the cemetery, at the bottom of the hill. And I'm hearing footfalls all around me in the trees. And I even heard a couple of whoops. And I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And I felt surrounded. Okay. Now I don't know if I'm sensitive. I've been told, not just by you, several people, that I am.
I'm sure Danielle's probably told you that.
Yeah. She's one of them. But she. So I'm walking. I get out of my truck, and I'm like, I'm hearing all this stuff, and I felt surrounded, and I'm like, well, maybe this wasn't the smartest decision I ever made in my life, So I said, you know what? I'm going to back up. I'm going to regroup, because at that time you didn't have cell phone service down there either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got back in my truck. I drove back up to civilization, as it were, and I made a couple of phone calls. And they were like, "Well, you don't need to do this. Don't go up there." Don't. I said, "No, I need it." At that point, it had gotten to where personally it felt like I needed to do this, almost like I was being called to do it, or driven, or pulled. Okay, and a lot of people are. When I want to use that terminology, a lot of people are going, "Well, that's bad juju, man. That's the dark things trying to call you in. And I don't think that's always the point, you know. I don't think that's always the case. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I cooled my jets for a little bit, and I went back, drove back down there, and I got out, and I could still hear some footfalls, but it wasn't nothing like it was. The feeling wasn't as almost claustrophobic as it, you know, I guess you could say.
The heaviness.
So I said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. So I take off up the trail, and this audio's on my channel. And this was a few years before we found out about the whole tiger situation. So I'm walking up the trail, and you hear me go, "Oh, did y'all hear that? I just heard a little growl over here. Kind of had a little purr to it to my left." So I continue up the trail, and I get it to the top of the cemetery, and I'm looking around. I got this little bitty pin light, no cell service, and a pocket knife. That's all I got with me, right? And now I'm one of the big proponents of, look, don't go unprepared. Okay, don't do that. Don't pull nothing stupid like I did. So I'm up there and I'm looking, and this little bitty pin light, you can't hardly see nothing. But I catch his eye shine back over my left shoulder, which the growl came from my left walking up the trail. And it's about 3-4 feet off the ground, maybe. Maybe 2, you know, that area. I'd say 2 to 3. And it starts playing kind of peekaboo with me behind a tree, because I can just barely make out a silhouette of a head. That's all I can see. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I'm going through my head first. I'm like, okay, what can this be? But the problem was that the eyes were about as big as silver dollars and had about 8 inches between them. So I'm sitting here trying to go through my head, what the hell could this be? And the only thing I could come up with, it's either a Bigfoot, or it's a cow or a horse laid up in that brush over there, right? Because that's the only things I could think of with a spread that big, that you know, between the eyes. And so I'm watching this thing, and then it starts kind of, you can barely see it's kind of turning its head like the light's bothering it, right? Well, then it stands up. And you know how when you're kneeling down and you stand up and you kind of move forward as well? That's what this looked like it did. Okay. And when it got about 5 feet high, I went, maybe it's time to go ahead and back out.
Yeah.
So I walked back down the trail, because you ain't running down this thing. You'll end up bouncing down this thing, which I've done.
Or rolling.
Because bumbles bounce. We all know that. And so I went back down to my truck, and that was it. Well, you fast forward a few years, you know, later, and we get surrounded by these cops, and they start telling us about these tigers being loose, you know, and we're like, and Jason McLean is absolutely convinced that was a tiger that I ran into.
Yeah, I've talked to Jason about that. Yeah.
But and then there was the time we were all camped out down there, and I've got my cot over in the corner of my tent up against the back wall, and I got a pretty high cot, and I'm laying there, and I'm listening, and I start hearing footsteps on the gravel. We're camped on gravel. Footsteps on the gravel. And I thought it was one of the guys that had got up to go take a leak. And I'm thinking, why are you taking a leak by my tent? Go take a leak by your own damn tent, you know? And it stops right outside right by my head. And then the next thing I hear is right next to my ear. I'm cheek to cheek with whatever this thing is. And I was buttoned down. I had my rain fly on, so I couldn't see outside. And the next thing I hear right by my head is, I'm like, what the hell is this? You know? And I'm going through my head, what the hell could this be? And I'm thinking it could be a bear. We got black bear out there, you know, now. It could be a critter. It could be, you know, all sorts of things. A pig or anything, tiger. And my next thought was, shit, my pistol's in my truck.
Oh, wow.
So like any good researcher, what do, Josh? You turn over, you grab your phone, you hit the voice record button, and you go back to sleep.
Wow.
So over the next hour and a half, when I reviewed the audio, about the next hour and a half, I'm hearing these tree knocks or wood pop or mouth pops, whatever they are. I don't know what they are. I think they probably do both. But I'm hearing this all around camp at different distances. So that was really a cool encounter. I mean, do I know what it was? No, I don't. Do I think I know what it was? Yeah, absolutely.
So, in your thought is that it's a tiger.
Well, not that one. I think that one was probably a Bigfoot, because that camp, we've had Bigfoot activity quite a bit in that camp before. Yeah. But the eye shine, I'm kind of leaning towards agreeing with Jason. I may have been running into a tiger that night. And I think the only thing that saved my ass is one, they're not hungry out there. There's plenty of game.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And the fact that they were around humans so much that maybe they don't see us as food.
Yeah.
Because
or maybe they see you as like having food, but not actually being the food.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think, but there's never, to my knowledge, there hasn't been any reported attacks. There's been sightings.
No, there have been sightings.
But sure. There hasn't been any attacks. So, but I know 17 cats were unaccounted for when they shut that place down. Mm-hmm. And when they finalized it, of course he moved, he was about 40 miles away from Brown Springs. And then when he got shut down, the other people took it over. They moved it to within about 2 miles of Brown Springs.
Yeah.
And when they shut it down, there were 17 cats, big cats, that went unaccounted for.
Yeah, so there you have it. The possibilities are there. You've got that possibility that could be what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, Tex, I'm going to shut it down for tonight, man. Thanks for coming on, and I was glad to get you on and talk about that stuff that was going on out there. Put the link to his channel up there.
Yeah, because we've got more of the investigation coming from Dogman Ranch. We ain't done. So
yeah. So yeah, check out Texas's channel. What days and nights are you on, Tex?
I do. The front porch is on Mondays at 8 p.m. Central, and then I do a morning show on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Central, normally with Paul. And then on Sundays, we haven't done it in a while because scheduling conflicts. Sundays, we normally do our true crime podcast, me and Danielle, Diva. And then also on Mondays at 7 p.m. Once she's been just swamped at work. They've had a lot going on. But she does her show, which is the Diva Dimension.
Now she's slated to come on next Sunday or next Friday night.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So talk to her and make sure, because I had her scheduled once before and she didn't show up. So and she's always sending me links to go to her show, but it's always when I got to do my stuff,
Right.
But just let her know to try to, so we don't have a scheduling mix up or whatever. And then Saturday I'm going to be getting up and heading to the conference in San Antonio where you guys are going to be. So and that's this coming Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What time does it start?
Well, not tomorrow, but
no, but I mean next Saturday, the
29th. Yeah.
29th, yeah.
And then you got our conference in Missouri coming up in September, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I wish I could make. I'm not going to be able to make that one, but I'll head down to San Antonio for this one and hang out. Last time I just showed up and we all went out to dinner and hung out for a few hours, but this time I'll actually go to the conference.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, man. So I'm going to see you guys there. And a question, I guess, for our friend who's in chat here, Rod, one of our colleagues. He
There
says,
you
"See you
go.
next Saturday." Cool, he'll be there. Then I'll see you. I was going to ask if he was going to be there. Hopefully, I'll see all my friends there. So should be fun. Should be a
I
good
see
time.
Brent's in chat too. Paranormal Portal.
Yeah, Paranormal Portal.
That'd be a good.
Okay.
That'd be a good guess for you too.
Well, tell him to hit me up, like to talk to me. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we can talk. And I see Dick Richards in the chat. Dick, I need to get you on with Jason Sunday night with Jason Bland. I got you slated to go on with him and tell your encounters over there. And who else? If Bigfoot Dwarf is in the chat, still don't know if he is or not, but if you can hear me, hit me up through email so that we can talk and get you on and talk to you. So, and then this coming month, we have a lot of great guests coming up. We got like James Bartley. I can't remember. We got a bunch of different people that we're talking to. I'd have to go back and look at the list of who all's, I think we're going to try and reschedule Robert Kreider. So I know I talked to, who did I talk to? God, there was somebody else that I was looking forward to. Oh, Kenny Irish. Kenny Irish is going to be coming on. Yeah. And then there's several people. And then I'm going to be going on Marzulli's show. So that'll be a good show. Yeah. So, all right, guys. And then tomorrow night we're off. But remember, don't forget, tomorrow is my debut on TikTok. We're on TikTok and we have the clips, but tomorrow I'm going to be retelling an encounter on TikTok and we're going to see how it goes. I'm going to start doing regular, the smaller, shorter encounters on TikTok.
Holy crap. Sorry to hear that,
Dick. What happened?
He says, sorry about Wednesday. He had a friend, had 2 girlfriends that unalived themselves in 1 week.
What? Oh, my gosh.
That's horrible. Wow.
Well, I mean, don't be sorry to me. I don't know. What are you sorry to me for? I don't know. And
I love you too, Dick. Man, Dick's been around. I've
he's been around for a while.
Yeah. I'll be co-hosting with Selena Garrett tomorrow night at Sunday night at 7 over on Southern Belle Bigfoot. She's just getting up and running. So
who is that?
She's new, man. She had a Bigfoot encounter where she was serving papers, and she rolled up to this house, and there's these 2 Bigfoot watching her from behind the house. One big one and then one little one that had antlers on its head. And it looked like it was all scrawny and stuff. Sounded like a shaman or something. But
well, that's weird.
It's pretty cool. But she started her own channel and I'm helping her. So.
Well, good. And I'll be on at like 8. So I don't know if you guys will be done by then, but
oh yeah, it's an hour show. We're done by then.
Yeah, so you guys can come over to the chat. All right, guys. Well, I'll see everybody. And I got to run. I got to try to get going here by midnight. There was one other thing I wanted to say. The time for the TikTok thing, I'm not 100% sure, but it'll probably be earlier in the day. And it's just going to be me retelling the encounter, and then we're going to do that. We're going to see how it goes and do it. Probably I have enough material to do one every day. I mean, but these smaller ones. And so go to TikTok and subscribe because, I think we need like a certain number of subscribers or something. I don't really know exactly how it works. But anyways, you hit Paranormal Roundtable on TikTok and you'll get a story every day. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to my guest, Tex. Always a great guest. Great pleasure to talk to you once again. And I'll be seeing you. I'm stoked. I'll be seeing you on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man.
Thank you, man.
Yep. All right. Good night.
Good night.
So that's Tex Wesson. For those of you who don't know, and thank you for saying that, Chris. And so thank you to those who donated. And get your name in green if your name is not in green, so you can do the giveaway. So we got to pick a couple people here. Tell me if you haven't won or not. Just say, hey, I haven't won. That's it. Jake says TikTok is one platform I won't follow you on. Why is that? Didn't you hear we're buying TikTok or whatever? Or we're buying half of it or whatever. Whatever. Does anybody want to win? Because I got to run. If you're not going to tell me here, I got to get going. Running out of time here. We have about how many boxes over there ready to be shipped off? 15 probably.
At the very least, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
about
bunch of
15.
boxes piled up, just ready to go.
Now they're ready to go. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to head out then. Nobody wants to win, I guess. I got to end the stream, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.